Good evening. Welcome to the June 20th edition of the Downers Grove Village Council meeting. We're glad you're with us, whether in chambers tonight or at home watching on TV now or at a future date. As is our custom, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett.
Here.
Commissioner Jose.
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit.
Here.
Commissioner Gilmartin.
Here.
Commissioner Glover.
Here.
Commissioner Tully.
Here.
Commissioner Davenport.
Here. Welcome all. Item 3 on our agenda is a motion concerning minutes of previous council meetings. Is there such motion?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the June 13th, 2023 minutes as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions from council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 4 on our agenda tonight is the public comments portion of the meeting. This is the portion of the meeting where we take public comment on items not on tonight's agenda. This is for items not on either the active or first reading portion of our agenda. So if you have something you'd like to share with us, please come on up to the podium and let us know. Okay. We will continue. Item 5 is our consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 2 passes unanimously. Item 6 is our active agenda. This is the portion of the meeting where we take up items on which we plan to take action tonight. These will be items which we have discussed at least once before, sometimes many times before. Is there a motion concerning our CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt a resolution to accept the annual comprehensive financial report of the Village of Downers Grove for the fiscal year January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022 as presented.
Second.
Before we go into this in any more detail, I just want to make a comment we'd like to hear certainly from folks at Forvis, but give me just a moment. I want to remind our residents and those watching on TV that the Village Finance Department, currently led by Robin Leahy, and for years prior to that by Judy Butney and others, has regularly been awarded for their work. In fact, the Village has been awarded the Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement in Excellence in Financial Reporting for 30-plus years, and the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award every year since 2013. Whether you agree, or anyone agrees, with the decisions this council or previous councils made, our staff team does an outstanding job of making sure that everything is reported clearly and transparently and accurately, and we thank them for that. So with that, please.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I appreciate a few minutes here tonight just to summarize results of the audit. I'm Scott Termine. I'm the Managing Director on the audit engagement for 2022. Just share a few brief comments with you. Feel free to stop me with any questions if you'd like, but I'll definitely make sure I pause at the end just to check in if there are any. For the 2022 audit, we have issued 4 main deliverables as part of the audit. So you have the annual comprehensive financial report, the Ogden TIF report, a single audit report, and then a required communication to you as the board that summarizes the results of the audit. So each of the reports includes what we refer to as a clean or unmodified opinion. So that's the best form of opinion you can receive. It's exactly what you'd like to have in the circumstances. And I'll just mention a couple comments on the financial statements to keep things brief. First, I do like to remind you that there is a nice narrative overview of the financial statements that begins on page 2-4 within the report. It just provides a good narrative, summary type information. It's got some comparative charts for you to just maybe easier understand than the financial statements. So would encourage you to look at that if you've not already done so. And if you've been paying attention over the last couple of years, we've been warning you about new standards that have been coming from the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. One significant one did take effect for this past year, which is the new lease accounting standard. So that does provide a significant change in the financial statements. You've got some new receivables on the books from your cell tower leases that haven't been there in the past. So just wanted to flag that for you. I'd also point out that the general fund's fund balance at 12/31/22, which you can see on page 3-3 of the report, shows an unassigned amount in the general fund of $23.3 million, which is about 40% of the actual expenses for the 2022 calendar year. So to give you some perspective on that, the Government Finance Officers Association suggests that you maintain no less than 2 months in reserves, and you're just under 5 months. So certainly well within the suggested parameters there. So good financial position there. And then I'll just note that for 2022, with continued ongoing federal grant spending, you did require a single audit because you spent more than $750,000. The bulk of that being from coronavirus recovery funds. You had about $1.6 million in spending there. And again, we issued what we refer to as a clean opinion on those, so no exceptions that we need to report to you on those grant programs. And then just a final note is that I alluded to the new standards, and again, there will be another one that will take effect for 2023, so no rest for the finance department again this year. That's going to apply similar accounting that you're using now for the leases to subscription-based information technology arrangements. So the village will need to take an inventory of those and present those under the new accounting standards. So I'll just pause there to see if there's any questions or if anyone would like any additional clarification on anything within the documents.
Any comments or questions from council? Any comments or questions from the audience on this report? It's a little dry, but if you have time, it's worth reading through.
Yeah, stick to the narrative. It's a lot easier to understand for sure.
It is available on our website with today's meetings. It'll be available there going forward as well, and certainly you're welcome to it anytime. Okay, Dave?
Real quick, Mayor and Council, according to best practices, we will be moving on to different auditors as required, and just like I said, best practice. I wanted to thank Scott and everybody on his team who's served as our auditors for the last several years. They're really great at their job. They're easy to work with, and we just thank them for their service. We appreciate that.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been great working with everybody at the village, and appreciate all the time and attention tonight and over the years for that matter.
We hate to see anybody go. Anytime we develop a relationship with somebody, we appreciate it, but it is, as Dave said, good practice to not have the same people doing audits every single year.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning directing staff to publish an RFP?
Mayor, I move that the council direct staff to publish a request for proposals for the redevelopment of Lot 2 of the Civic Center project.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the audience on this item?
Could you just define Lot 2, please?
Oh boy, Mike, do you have a map by any chance? So roughly speaking, bear with me, it's a little rough. Roughly speaking, it's this building to about the end of what you think of as the parking lot for the maintenance area, approximately. We'll try and get a map up, but it's more or less this entire building, plus a little bit. Please, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Linda Elsick, and I live at 828 Clyde Avenue in Downers Grove. I've lived here since 1986. My husband and I chose Downers Grove because after looking at various suburbs, we felt we would get the biggest bang for our buck here in Downers. We chose a house based on just one income. We just had our daughter and wanted to expand our family, so we based our decision on my husband's income. We moved in and slowly worked on the house, had another child, and met many wonderful neighbors. If we were buying my current house now, we could not do it on one income. The high cost of housing is not just a Downers Grove phenomenon. Prices are high all over the country, but instead of looking to the federal government for solutions, Downers Grove has the opportunity to work with business to begin to address the issue on a local level. I am asking the council to include 8 to 10 affordable units in the request for a proposal for a developer to bid on the village property known as Lot 2. I am asking the council to be creative, to be brave, to be forward-thinking in the direction of the sale of this property. Housing costs are a major problem in our village and across the country. Can 8 to 10 units really make an impact on the problem? If you're one of those people living in those units, it sure does. It could be life-changing or even life-saving. It is very noble to say that you want to get the best price for the land for the taxpayers. That's a real generic promise that everyone likes. Save us money. This has been hailed as a promise made years ago, but a lot of things have happened since those promises have been made. Have you gone out and talked to the people in the village? I have a cousin who works for the food pantry, Fish Food Pantry. About a year and a half ago, 80 families came to the pantry each week. Now it's up to 200. 200 families. There are entry-level teachers and first responders who work in Downers Grove but can't afford to live here. Kids whose parents live here, who lived here as children, but now can't afford to move back, even with a job. Seniors are finding it hard to live here and pay for rent, groceries, and medication. Being in a downtown location would benefit them all. I challenge this council to review its values. What is more important, getting the best deal, or is it valuing all citizens, even those who can't afford the McMansions? It's only 8 to 10 units, but it's a start. I challenge this council to step outside its comfort zone by taking that first tiny step. I challenge this council to make affordable housing a priority now and in the future, to make Downers Grove a leader in affordable housing in DuPage County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Laura Temple, 1115 Prairie Avenue. A friend told me that her priest gave a sermon once, and he charged his congregation to, quote, do the next right thing. The next right thing, that really struck me, because it means that even if I didn't do the right thing before, or don't always do the right thing, every day there could be at least one opportunity for me to do the next right thing. You now have that opportunity as leaders in Downers Grove, a community of welcoming, caring residents, to do a next right thing. In the past, we have not made a concerted or coordinated effort to address the need for financially accessible housing for a wide range of income levels. 25 years ago, when the construction of multi-unit buildings, most of them close to the downtown amenities and transportation, really started to take off in Downers Grove, we didn't make affordable units part of those deals. By my estimate, there are at least 12 or so of those multi-story, multi-unit buildings that have been built, certainly since I moved here 29 years ago. If we had started then, incenting developers to include some affordable units in each of those buildings, we would now have a meaningful number of units, maybe 80 or 100. And then asking the developer of Lot 2 to include some affordable units would just be par for the course for doing development in Downers Grove. Alas, 25 years ago, we did not do that. But it is never too late, and we have the opportunity now as a community to do the next right thing. Now, to do this, you have to consider that the right thing in the public context doesn't always mean doing the thing that creates the most wealth or has immediate financial payback or profit or windfall. In the public context, sometimes the right thing is harder to measure. But you know it when you see it. It's why we have and why we wholeheartedly support having, just for 2 examples, a library and parks where we could have put tax revenue generating buildings, because we know that these amenities add value to our community. And another thing that would add value to our community is having a wide range of people wanting to and being able to live here. The wanting to is pretty easy. Downers Grove is a great place to live. Here we all are loving it. It's the being able to that we need to address. To truly make Downers Grove a welcoming community, there needs to be affordable housing options for a range of budgets. This means that people who love Downers Grove can stay here in their community of supportive family and friends. People who want to come back to that supportive community can afford to. And people who have heard great things and want to try us out could find a place that meets their budget needs. I would like to see you include in the RFP incentives for the developer of Lot 2 to include some affordable units in the building. It's a start. It's a first and admittedly small but meaningful, necessary step. It is our chance now to do the next right thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sandy Mueller, 1060 68th Street. I don't have a script. My first meeting, a little nervous. I have been a homeowner in Downers Grove for 19 years, and I feel really lucky to be so because I was born into a very low-income family in rural Michigan. And if it hadn't been for people helping me, I would still be there, and I would still be struggling to put food on the table like my parents did, even though they both worked. And we ended up having to live with my grandparents because we couldn't keep our house. And we worked. They worked. They weren't bums, they weren't freeloaders. We got lucky that we could go and live with our grandparents. And so that makes me want to be inclusive in what I consider to be my luckiness, because people helped me, and I want to help other people, and I want our community, I want to live in a community that values all its people. And I realize, I'm not stupid. I can figure out that affordable housing, we all know there's a housing crisis. We all know it's here, not just out there anymore. And we all want someone to do something about it. But there's also a little fear involved, and I get that because people are scared. They don't want what happened in Willowbrook to happen here, and I get that. I do, and I understand that fear. On the other hand, I feel like I don't want to let fear keep us from helping people that legitimately need help and just want a better life. And so I feel like there's a couple of ways we as a community can approach the affordable housing crisis, and one of them is to do what we can to make a difference in our own town and maybe lead the way. And the other thing is to make a bigger bubble. And some of our neighbors make a bigger bubble, and I don't want to be a bubble person. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Barnett and Village Council members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Ann Wick, and I'm a resident of Downers Grove, 1534 Grant Street. And we have lived in Downers Grove for approximately 20 years. As you've heard earlier, there's a need in Downers Grove for more affordable housing. When I was the PTA treasurer at one of our local grade schools, there was a discussion about eliminating the Fun Lunch program. We voted to keep the program as there were students within our district who not only relied on the program for the food for the day, they would often take the meal home to split with their family members so they could also have something to eat. I was told by a few teachers that they had to be careful about assignments as they had students who were living in vehicles or traveling nightly to different pad sites and didn't have the stability of a home and couldn't do the schoolwork that they would normally want to assign. My next door neighbor, his partner passed away not that long ago, and he's a Vietnam veteran, Bronze Star recipient, and he has to leave the community because he cannot afford to live here on one income, even though he's working 4 days a week. So this affects a wide range of individuals. Assisting at least a few families with a safe and stable home better helps students to succeed academically, socially, and mentally. According to Mark Rank, a professor at Washington University, it is estimated that for every dollar spent on reducing childhood poverty, the country would save at least $7 with respect to the economic costs of poverty. The military published the same 7-to-1 ROI with the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, otherwise known as the GI Bill, which also included affordable housing for white service members. Investing in people usually pays dividends via many forms which aren't always depicted on a spreadsheet. Government is not a business. While both government and businesses require fiscal responsibility, and I greatly appreciate your efforts in the stewardship of our tax dollars, government and business have very different functions in society. Government is uniquely tasked to represent the interests of the citizens, all of our citizens. Our government has long recognized the importance of affordable housing, which has greatly benefited hundreds of thousands, if not millions, throughout the years. Between 1932 and 2008, there were at least 22 programs to address the need for affordable housing, which is deemed a high priority for numerous reasons. We have the opportunity to serve our community providing a few affordable housing units. Thank you for your time, and again, I ask you to please require an inclusionary or affordable housing component be included in the redevelopment agreement. A handful of units may not seem like much, but to those individuals, it will be life-changing. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak tonight, and I'll be really brief because much of what I was planning to say has already been said, but I also wanted to lend my support to including, I'm Allison Heverin. I'm a Downers Grove resident at 1702 Chicago Avenue. I just wanted to echo the advocacy of others for including some provision for requiring some affordable housing units in the upcoming RFP. Just to what I was thinking about when I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to say was a quote that I had read and heard attributed to many people, but the gist of it is that the moral test of government is how the government treats its weakest members. And I'm not saying that the people who can't afford to buy housing in Downers Grove are in any way weak, but I do think it's a moral test for our government and for our village council here to make this community accessible and affordable to those who currently can't afford to live here. And we've heard, many stories from different people in different types of jobs that I hope we all feel like should be able to enjoy the benefits of this great community and currently cannot. I know that 8 to 10 units is a tiny drop in the bucket, but the fact that we can't do everything shouldn't be a reason to do nothing, and that incremental change over time can lead to pretty amazing results. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name is Robin Tryloff. I live at 1225 Parkway Drive, and I've been a resident for more than 30 years. I'm here to ask the village to include in the RFP for this lot a requirement that 10% of the building's units be affordable housing. 70 years of consistent appreciation in housing values, combined with stagnant real wage growth, has caused a crisis of housing affordability and an intensification of wealth and racial inequality. Young people are now struggling to afford the same homes their parents could afford at their age. Building affordable housing helps people find homes that meet their evolving needs at price points they can afford. And when people can find affordable housing, it frees up additional discretionary income for them to spend locally. Studies have shown that affordable housing enables more households to access housing in high-opportunity communities like ours. It uplifts residents, encourages social connection, reduces overcrowding, increases adjacent property values, attracts businesses and jobs, and lowers crime rates. Affordable housing helps ensure that working families will remain in our community, the working families who provide the labor that makes our economy grow and help provide a growing population of students to keep our local school system healthy and strong. Creating affordable housing can cultivate a vibrant, diverse community that makes neighborhoods more attractive over time. A place to live is much more than a house. It's a home for new, young, diverse families who can enrich our community in so many ways. The communities that have learned this are flourishing. Please don't miss this opportunity and let them pass us by.
Thank you.
I'm Janet Winningham. My family has lived in Downers Grove for over 50 years altogether, and I'm here, I guess, to be the fly in the punch bowl. I think that affordable housing units should not be included in the RFP, and I say that with all seriousness to the topic of affordable housing, and I support the notion of affordable housing. I don't think it belongs at Lot 2. I am aligned with the goals that you've heard before, but not here. The Downers Grove Village Council has a responsibility to fairly represent all the residents of Downers Grove. I'm a senior citizen, and my property taxes have increased dramatically over the last 5 years, primarily due to the school referenda, for services my family have never used and will never use. I supported the referendum. I supported the schools. But the property tax trajectory is only going up. As a senior citizen, I want to know that I will be able to afford to stay in my house that I live in now. And I worked very hard to be able to acquire and maintain. There's a TIF district on the agenda for Meadowbrook Shopping Center. That project will get property tax relief, but the residents will not. The last council meeting, a statement was made by one speaker or another that it would be okay if the village did not obtain maximum value for Lot 2. I rather think this is a cavalier attitude, especially against existing senior residents on fixed incomes. So I understand that currently statistics on affordable housing in Downers Grove indicate at present the percentage of affordable units in Downers Grove is sufficient for the population that is here. So I'd like to take I think the council should take some time and actively and thoroughly and methodically study a way to attack this problem in a unified manner. And I do not know if there's a current plan with the village for affordable housing. If there is, I'd like to read it. If there isn't, I'd like to be on the committee to help establish it, because I know it's an important topic and I know a lot about affordable housing. Again, the topic is important, but it deserves thoughtful planning and consideration, and I don't think just saying, we have Lot 2, let's do something with it, is the appropriate response. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I am a new resident of Downers Grove. Moved here in 2018. My wife and I enjoy Downers Grove. We love the downtown area, we love the events. But one thing we've noticed since we've moved here, and we've talked to people, that there isn't any, as people are calling, affordable housing available for those who can't afford this location. Our property that we bought has gone up almost twofold in terms of the cost. And in 2018, that wasn't cheap. So having been in this arena for 31 years of affordability, that was my background, I wanted to assure that the council that if you make this decision to put the units, 10 units, 8 units, you would be doing the village of Downers Grove a good service. Most of the people who would do or live in affordable housing would spend their monies here in your vicinity. That's a fact. You would increase the businesses' revenue in the downtown area. You would also contribute to the social well-being of people. I am a product of affordable housing. I have grown up, made my way here to Illinois. I considered myself a good resident, good citizen, and the people that would come from affordable housing would be doing the same thing. Affordability does not mean the lowest of income. So I want to get that clear. there's always, you can construct affordable housing. So does it mean that you have to take 30% of the income, as people tend to guess that that's what you're going to do with affordable housing? So if you do this, the developer that you would get should be at least experienced in this area. And I would ask that you would really consider affordable housing. I'll tell you 2 stories that I know about here in your village. I met a young man here. He went to the South High School, Downers Grove. He can no longer live here. His parents are gone, and he can't live here. I met another person just the other day who works in Downers Grove for your businesses, loves the area. He can't live here. He has no way of making the money that it takes to live here. There's nothing affordable. I think that those are 2 individuals that I think you would benefit from. So I ask this council, please seriously consider having affordable housing units in your area. Thank you.
Sir, could we get your name for the record, please?
My name is Claude Nesbitt.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Julie Bretthauer, 4909 Montgomery. I've been a resident of Downers Grove for 32 years. And I just wanted to echo some of the previous statements. I would like the council to consider including a component for affordable housing in the Lot 2 RFP. It might be a drop in the bucket, but I think we have to start somewhere. So I would appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Others in the audience on this subject? Okay, comments or questions from the council on this matter? Martin, go ahead.
Sure, I'll start. Thank you, Mayor. Really appreciate everybody coming down and sharing their views. Also appreciate everybody that sent in emails to all of us on this topic. Really warmed and empathetic to the notion that this is an issue that deserves attention from time to time, and it has received it from time to time in Downers Grove. Those who've been around as long as some of us know that we've done ad hoc committees on this topic and had community conversations and looked at data specific to Downers Grove to find out what really is the issue and then what would be an effective way to actually address it. And I love the fact that this reminds me of the hashtags that I know some people like to use on their social media of Love DG and DG Cares, because it's really heartfelt to hear these comments from folks. And I appreciate very much the desirability of the diverse housing stock. And one of the questions that I'll get back to later is just how diverse is our housing stock, because we have shared a lot of heartfelt comments, and as heartfelt as they are, they're anecdotal. Before we make any decisions on a topic of this importance, I think it's really more important to actually have Downers Grove specific data about our housing stock. I don't have that at my fingertips. I know it was studied years ago, and the conclusion after a broad community conversation was that there wasn't an issue as defined, and that came as a surprise to some people, but nevertheless it was the outcome. Because I'm also not concerned that it's so much about affordability as it is availability. So this is why the data is very important to have this conversation, and I do agree in data-driven decisions. And we're just lacking the data that's specific to Downers Grove in 2023. That would be very important to have this conversation. But there's really, as empathetic as I am to all this, the reason why I'm not in favor of including a affordable housing component in Lot 2 is principally for 3 reasons, and I've already previewed one of them. One is that, and I did this probably candidly more than anybody on this council put together, is advocated for the new Village Hall and Police Station through numerous iterations, and at every single turn the component was, and what we represented to the community was that in order to minimize the impact on taxpayers of the cost of the new Village Hall and the police station, that within our zoning ordinances we would maximize the value that received from the parcel that we're currently sitting on, Lot 2, because the idea was that was a key component to paying for the project. And a key component of paying for the project was try to do it with as little tax dollars as possible. And that was something that I know I advocated for personally. I know other council members and other people had advocated for that. And candidly, that's the way it was sold to the community. It is a TIF district. There's a lot of different financial components to go into that. And I just personally cannot change midstream like that, notwithstanding the importance of this issue. Reason number 2, I realize that 8 to 10 units is still 8 to 10 units. I get that. But I don't agree with the proportionality of the loss of revenue that would likely occur. Now, my understanding is that if we were to do this, we would reduce the number of people that would bid on the project, and obviously you always want to have more people bid than fewer. And number 2, we may end up not getting anywhere near the land value for Lot 2, which could be in excess of $2 million. Now, we don't know that for sure. We haven't gone out and asked, but that's my understanding. And I just don't see the proportionality or the fiscal responsibility in potentially losing up to $2 million in value for 8 to 10 units. It's just disproportionate. So it goes back to the comment that was made, yes, but not here. The math doesn't work. I did take to heart the comment that we need to do things for all the citizens, and it is a little odd to me that we would, in the name of affordable housing, making things more affordable for some people, that we would put an additional tax burden on all the people. That just seems to me to be an odd place to do this, and an odd vehicle by which to do it. Because who picks up the cost of the land that we don't get? Taxpayers. And that brings me to my third point, which is, this is an important conversation. I said that last time, and in response to some other comments, if there's a community conversation to be had here, then it needs to be 2 things. 1, it needs to be a community conversation. We don't do these things with a handful of people and 1 week's notice. This is the kind of thing where in 2007, there was an ad hoc committee started. There was broad community input. There was data. There were participants from builders to realtors to people who've lived there their entire lives. And it was a community conversation that tried to comprehensively identify and address an issue that was viewed to be important. I am uncomfortable doing that with Lot 2. Community's not here. We haven't had that conversation. We have heartfelt but anecdotal evidence. We don't have the data. So that's why this is not something I can support, and therefore won't be asking for it. The other issue is that things have changed. A lot of things have changed. We've also added a lot more senior living facilities than when I went to high school here. Those opportunities for seniors to live in Downers Grove didn't exist then, and they do now. And I'm not trying to comment on the affordability of those units, but they're here and they weren't here before. So I'll just say again that while I really appreciate the heartfelt interest and am empathetic to the overall issue, I think it was well said earlier by a speaker, not here, not this. This is the wrong vehicle for it. Instead, I would want to have, if we're going to do it, and if the council supported it, would be a conversation that would involve the community with some Downers Grove specific data. Those are my 2 cents.
Thank you. Others? Leslie?
Yep. First, can you remind us of, do you remember what about an average tax bill is for us? Because the village is only about 10% of the tax bill, correct? I can't remember what the numbers are.
That's correct. I'll pull one up right now.
Thank you so much. I also kind of want to point out that IDA, the current data on some of the affordability metrics is about 5 years old, and those metrics for 2023 should be coming out any day now. So I've been keeping an eye on that website, but it should be here about any time. I also really want to let it be known for the record that it has never been a given that we would sell this property for top dollar. It has been discussed, but I've been asking for incorporating affordable units since I got on council in 2019, and we have been discussing this project. In fact, I can point to the August 16th, 2022 minutes where I am on record stating that I think that this is an important idea. So quite realistically, I think we've been talking about this for over a year, and I have been pushed and pushed and pushed to say that's going to be the next council's purview, that's going to be the next council's purview. So quite frankly, it's been a year. We've been talking about it, and here we are. I guess we could have had more substantive conversations, but unfortunately, this is kind of where we're at, and so this is the timeline that we have to be working under. I also think it's important to note that I know that the county is working on this project. Liz Chaplin, who is District 2, who covers a lot of Downers Grove, is the chair of the ad hoc committee for this issue.
So, to be clear, my research was not Google. Instead, I talked to numerous people in DuPage County familiar with the issue, such as county board members, including Liz Chaplin, nonprofit organizations in DuPage County who have been working on this issue for decades, including some places in Downers Grove, and other council members and other communities nearby who have been working on some of these projects as well, real estate agents, mortgage folks. And I mined the relevant state and federal websites, so IDA, IDHA, and HUD, for verifiable and reliable data. And nobody that I talked to on any of those recommended against moving forward with at least exploring the issue, because again, that's all seeking out this RFP could do. As we discuss it, it's obviously important that the rent data be current, and we refrain from using outdated statistics from those pre-COVID era. We've seen pretty historic rates of inflation since 2021, so those earlier numbers are not necessarily even relevant to the market post-COVID, as we all know. It's important to also consider that basically anyone younger than Gen X has more debt from college compared to their counterparts in other generations on average. Housing costs, college costs have risen far beyond inflation, and wage increases have been minimal. Pair that with the astronomical cost of childcare, and a young family is easily priced out of this market. And of course, there are always going to be a few apartments that you are going to be able to find at affordable costs in Downers Grove. I'm not suggesting there aren't. But that doesn't mean that they satisfy a clear need and demand for more. And again, there is a chart that I had provided to my fellow council members that the percentage of people under 24 and adults over 65 are at the very highest proportions paying more than 30% of their gross income. Now, again, that's gross income. That's not your take-home pay on rent, and that doesn't include utilities. And again, that was a little bit older data from 2021, so things have likely shifted. Others have suggested that you could purchase a condo in our area for, in the 150 to 200,000 range. But you cannot forget that if you want to qualify to purchase a condo, you still have to come up with a down payment and closing costs and take on a debt of often HOA dues and the highest average interest rates we've seen in well over a decade. This is a huge number for people who are living paycheck to paycheck. And when you think about people who potentially want to buy into here, because these are the folks who are renting until they can afford to buy, you can't have a buying power calculation focused solely on income. I have a friend who's a mortgage underwriter, and you can't use first a mean or median salary for any given profession for a young family, as they're at the entry point of their fields. They're earning the bottom of the salary scale. I know that when my husband and I moved here. Many young professionals have roles that require additional degrees and certifications, which means they carry high debt. So mortgages are qualified with a housing ratio and a debt ratio. Both of those ratios need to qualify. So just using that gross income for the housing ratio doesn't incorporate the debt ratio. What if you have credit card debt, child support, alimony, business loans? What about unreimbursed business expenses? That number drops quickly. So we cannot just consider buying power as their gross income. And that overestimation of buying power is what led to that housing crash of the late 2000s, which is what led to so many people needing to rent, and why lenders now determine a buyer's ability to repay based on that. And again, these are just the ratios to qualify for anything in the first place. That doesn't say anything for if the family has the residual income to afford to live in our area. That includes all the other expenses not included in those ratios: childcare, utilities, property and income taxes, Social Security, insurance for medical, dental, vision, automobiles, homeowners, renters, groceries, transit, and monthly maintenance. These are required expenses that a family has to pay before you can even think about purchasing in the area. And a lot of those expenses are also required when you're renting. So to give you a perspective, my husband and I bought our home for $255,000 in 2012. So that was about 10 years ago. Costs were still at the bottom of the market. Mortgage rates were still 3 to 4%. At the time, our combined income was about $135,000. I have an advanced degree. Between two of us, even in 2012, we are not exactly at the high end of the income scale. Because of our student loan debt, we didn't have a kid at the time, and car payments, our mortgage broker said we were income rich but cash poor because of all of those debts. That is a huge consideration when you're thinking about people who need to have affordable rents or affordable housing. That's the case for the vast majority of young people now. And I would venture to say, though I cannot verify this, that $135,000 wouldn't get you very far in Downers Grove now. And finally, it is always good to have another report. Data is always helpful. But we have a lot of research on this topic already, both locally in DuPage County and nationally. We have rents that we can take averages for. We can discuss the real estate market, and we can discuss what average salaries are. But again, that doesn't give you an idea of what an entry-level professional might be making. I do actually have a couple reports from Naperville that they had done recently, and I spoke to a couple folks on their council, and they stated nothing was a huge surprise. It was kind of the concerns that, again, we're all kind of sharing here. A lot of no new insights, no new innovations. There's always the idea that lower income workers and those that are just starting off are less likely to have reliable transportation and rely on public transit. So having something affordable in this downtown area where people can access the train would be a huge benefit. And we know that that's a trend regardless of where we live in the US, that access to public transit really helps people who are just kind of starting off and trying to find jobs. So my concern is that this is less of a, I have a lot to concern, and a little bit more of an ideological, I just don't want this here. And I am incredibly concerned with that. I hope that's not the case. So I know that others, including Commissioner Tully just spoke now, to perhaps find other mechanisms to improve in this area. And so if this doesn't survive, I really hope that we can have these conversations as we talk about the Fairview area subcorridor and perhaps some other priority action items for ordinances, so we can have a good discussion and come up with some solutions. Because we really do have both an availability but also an affordability issue in Downers Grove. Again, I could not afford to live here had I not bought at the bottom of the market in December on the south side of town. So that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Others? Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few comments that I'd like to hold after this request. I'd like to make a suggestion that perhaps we could include a request in the RFP for pricing the project with affordable housing and one without it. I think we have, as Commissioner mentioned to me offline, property on the Michigan Avenue side of Downers Grove. I understand the value of that placement. I think there's a lot of developers very interested in this project, and I imagine requiring them to respond with both a non-affordable housing proposal and one with it would not be objectionable to them as they seek to get this property. I think what that does for me, since the revenue seems to be a large concern in terms of what was, I'll put in quotes, sold to the public about the project itself, I think that gives us the opportunity to get the real data. Let's get a proposal that includes both, take a look at that, evaluate that from many of the factors that we've discussed, and Commissioner Sadowski, you guys mentioned, Commissioner Tully has mentioned, but that also includes that revenue. I think just generally speaking, we've received some information from staff around what the impact could be, and I think what it equated to, I'm not sure where the $2 million number came from, Commissioner Tully. It looked at about $30,000 a year if we are at 20 units. If we're talking about 10 units, that's $15,000 a year in reduced tax revenue over the course of the project and the TIF and the revenue from that. That to me feels much more manageable from the standpoint of we're not talking about millions of dollars lost. I think we should let the market indicate what that looks like. I am a strong proponent of having an affordable housing piece to this RFP and to this project, but I understand the idea of looking at it from both sides. I think that's a fair compromise, and I would love to hear feedback from my fellow commissioners on adding that to the RFP. I then feel we can then have the debate further down the the road about whether or not, once those proposals come back, I think it makes it a more substantive debate as it pertains to revenue. So I would just ask if others have thoughts on that.
Do you want to make a motion to amend?
Sure, I move to amend the motion to add provisions that both require a proposal with affordable housing component and one without.
Second.
Okay, let's continue the conversation. The motion is really the focus now of this conversation up on the dais. Is there anybody who wants to speak to that motion where we would add a request that affordable housing be one alternative in the proposal? Leslie?
Yeah, I feel as though that could be a compromise. Then we would get a little bit better picture of the revenue to see if we are, going to be putting too much on the backs of those who are on fixed incomes. And I think it would be a great idea to, again, get the numbers, and then we can actually have the data to follow through. Thanks.
Anyone else? Martin?
I appreciate the suggestion, Commissioner. It's a creative approach. Two things. One, what I was referencing was actually $2.5 million from the sale of the property. That's where that number came from. My understanding is that we would potentially limit not only the bidders, but also what they would require or what they would be willing to offer for the land. That's where my number comes from. Do I know that for sure? Of course I know. Your proposal is intriguing to me, but I am reluctant to support it if it's required that all bidders submit both, because I think it will still create the same issue that I raised. If we want to put something in there, as we encourage you, if you would like to provide this information, then of course we would have it. I have no problem with that. But what I'm concerned about is that we, and look, whether we like it or not, it's a likely reality that if we limit the pool of, and I could be wrong, but if we limit the pool of those who might respond to this because of whatever reason, that would impact the finances that are baked into how we pay for this project. So if there was a further modification, and I won't ask you for a friendly amendment, but if there was a further modification of asking that bidders, if they wish to provide that as an alternative because the council is interested in it, but not make it a requirement, that might be something I could support. I'm trying to compromise the compromise.
A question.
Mike, go ahead.
Clarification. How many units are we talking about with this amendment?
It's 8 to 10.
It could be 8 to 10. It could be 10%, which would, I think the math is a little different because I think in the front of the report it's 86 units that we're basing the math on. I think the evaluation of what the hit might be was based on 100. So it would be likely around 17 units at 20% and 8.5.
The technical answer to your questions, it wasn't stated.
Yeah. And that could be part of it. It could be twofold. What's a 10%? What's a 20%? And no commitment from our perspective, no commitment for us to make a decision on that tonight in terms of, well, tonight we have to make a decision on the numbers, but not deciding on whether or not we go forward with it.
Yeah. So, point of order, I'm just supposed to be talking about this now?
The amendment.
So, I'm supportive of the amendment.
Anyone else? Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just keep this short since I think there's probably more comments coming and I've got more to say, but I'd be much more interested in what Commissioner Tully was talking about. Having a voluntary inclusion, because I do share the same concerns that we could be limiting the number of respondents, which would potentially limit the market. I think we should get the information if we're going to get it without having an unintended effect on that market. Thank you, Mayor.
I'll only say that there's nothing about the original proposal that precludes a bidder from including affordable housing. But secondly, I'll remind everybody that this is a TIF situation, which means in no uncertain terms, time is of the essence. TIF proposals work best for all of the public when they start immediately. The reason we're talking about this a long ways ahead of us yet on knocking down this building is because we want to be digging holes with the developer the moment we're able to. So anything that would add to that in terms of study or complexity is something that I would be adamantly opposed to. The TIF works best when it's rolling on day one. So I would not be supportive of the proposed amendment. Any other comments or questions about the amendment? Chris, your amendment? You got something else you want to add?
I suppose I would accept and move to amend it to where it would be an option, but not required. I so move that.
I think we need to vote on the first one first.
Yeah.
You can amend the amendment.
You want to amend the amendment?
Yeah.
All right.
Do I need to move to amend the amendment?
We'll
treat it as a
Treat that as a friendly
We'll
amendment.
treat it as a friendly
Friendly
amendment, but
amendment,
let's do this just so that everybody's super
Yeah.
clear.
Yep.
Let's ask you to take a second and sort of restate the whole thing.
Okay. I move that we amend the RFP to include an optional request for proposal on affordable housing at both 10% and 20% units,
Of the unit counts.
unit count.
Second.
All right, so I need some clarification.
Sure?
In your mind, the proposal goes out to the public and says, we're offering this parcel for development,
Mm-hmm.
and we would welcome affordable housing components at 10 or 20%, but they are not required to submit a bid. Is that, am I understanding it
I
correctly?
feel that that's the compromise that has a likelihood to get through, so that is what I'm proposing. Well said.
That's what we do.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what we do.
The sausage being made in
Martin.
real time.
Mayor, question for staff, if I may.
Please.
I have utmost confidence you'll be able to communicate this in a way that makes it crystal clear that this is not required, but it's something that the council is interested in potentially exploring information on, and if the bidder would like to include it, that's basically what we're getting at. And that this, in doing so, will not in any way, shape, or form, to the mayor's point, slow down the issuance of the RFP.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the amendment?
Thank you.
Greg?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and throw a monkey wrench into it. What's the definition of affordable we're going to use? I think that's part of the community conversation we need to have. Is it, to Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit's point, you know, where do you fix it on an
Sure.
income level? Where do you know, what?
Yeah. I think if you're asking me, Commissioner Tully mentioned the 2007 ad hoc committee that took a look at this. Their definition of affordable housing was pretty spot on to what Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit was looking at. It was a metric based on 60% of median and then taking 30% of that. So I think we can very quickly come up with an agreed amount of what that looks like, or defer to standards that are being used on I think on a fairly straightforward basis. In fact, the 2007 report actually looked at middle income and not low income. So I think it's a little different metric, but I think it's worth exploring. And I would assume, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, developers would have a good handle on what affordability means.
Yeah, if it's appropriate, Mayor, I'll just chime in. From a staff perspective, this is a request for proposal. A proposal is something that we do when we don't have hard bid specs, if you will. And so I think the development community would understand if we left it a little bit open and said the village would welcome optional submittals that include affordable housing and 10 to 20% of the total unit count. Now, all the proposals will come back eventually for council consideration, and so you'll get a better handle on how the development community responded to that request.
And I can make a quick point to that Illinois typically refers to the 60% of area median income kind of as the income that you're looking for, and then you're looking at 30% of that should be your total housing cost. So that includes rent as well as utilities. So that kind of gives you kind of a general area of how Illinois does business.
Sure.
Does that help answer your question?
It does. Good to get an idea of what everybody has in mind, because I think it's hopefully a longer-term conversation, because I think we should consider whether we consider the definition of affordable to be something else.
Mm-hmm.
There could be other factors that play into it. We could decide that It needs to be a different number.
Yeah.
So I think there's a whole lot that goes into this that probably isn't entirely germane to the amendment. But thank you. I appreciate the feedback.
Mike, please.
So we're talking about the original motion now?
No.
No, we're still on the amendment.
No further comment then. I'll get the hang of it sooner or later.
Nothing else on
Nothing,
that?
no further comment then.
Anyone else on the amendment? Okay, Rosa, would you please call the roll on the amendment?
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport?
Aye.
Commissioner Tully?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett? Oop,
Nay.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
And Mayor Barnett?
Nay. Okay, now, Mike, you look like you're chomping at the bit.
Not chomping at the bit, just, just want to make sure I'm not speaking out of order. So, yeah, I think that this is certainly worthy and in need of much more discussion. And in fact, we have some other things on our agenda tonight in long-range planning where I think that this can come up and should come up, and if it doesn't, I'll bring it up. It's, we heard what is affordable. I appreciate those comments. How do we define this? How much help is enough help? Should we even be providing the help? And what impact will that have? 8 units, 10, setting an example. So many great insights here, but we're lacking a true vision about how we want to approach this this need, and I don't know that it's as clear as we'd like it to be. Affordable means one thing to one person, is something to somebody else. We certainly heard from a number of people talking about affordability as it relates to retirees, teachers, firefighters, recent college grads. So I think that my curious question is, what does, are there certain income levels where there's greater need than others, and what's that look like in Downers Grove? I don't know, and I wish I did know, because I think it would be easier to frame the discussion we're having tonight around that. Certainly, it seems like working families is something that I'm hearing quite a bit, and that we all kind of agree on. And I know that there's a number of ways that the village could take the lead in this. I do question whether or not this is the thing to do, though. If staff is correct, and it does amount to something like $29,700 a year in lost TIF money, as well as some untold amount, if anything, reduction of the $2.55 million in the sale of the property, the question comes to mind, if we had those dollars to spend every year, is this the way we would do it? Or are there other ways we could have greater impact? I'm certainly in favor of, and I'd like to discuss bringing back the community grants program. We spend about $30,000 a year right now on Meals for Wheels, I believe, and there's a request for more. And so it seems like there's a number of different ways that we could look at meeting the need of people in our community, and being those brave leaders that we've been asked to be, and certainly would like to make things more welcoming here in Downers Grove. But as Commissioner Tully points out, a lot of anecdotal, heartfelt things. I'm also, I'm not going to go through all my bona fides, but I'm also from rural Michigan and grew up quite poor. And so this is something that speaks to me as well. This is not going to be something, at least for me, where we have a discussion about it and nothing happens. So I'll make that commitment right now. But I'm going to reserve my judgment on this being the thing to do to meet the need in the here and now. And I'm really excited about our conversation we're going to have about Fairview. I really think that there's an opportunity there to do a lot of wonderful things that really could set the stage for other things that we do here in town, and we could learn some lessons there. It's really a unique opportunity, and so I don't want people thinking either that this is our last great chance, to address this issue. So that's all I have to say for now, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Others on the original motion? Correct.
Thank you, Mayor.
Motion is amended, sorry.
As amended.
Yeah. I appreciate all the different comments about Fairview Avenue and that potential redevelopment opportunity over there, because I'm a resident of the Fairview Avenue district area. And I share the thought that, yes, there are additional opportunities down the road. I also share in some of the reservations we've heard tonight. I've been among those who have said that we need to maximize the value of this property in order to minimize the impact on our residents, who are also our taxpayers. And yet we've found different ways to increase the price tag of the project when we felt that there were other positives to be gained. There were other value to be gained. I'm thinking specifically of the environmental changes we made that have a greater societal value than maybe just the dollars and cents that we're spending on them. All of that said, I'm not sure that that's necessarily the case here. I think there's an extent to which we're putting the cart before the horse. We really don't have any good data that is recent and that is local. Even Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit referred to some of the data that's out there being 5 years old and warning about avoiding using pre-COVID numbers. I think that's all valid. And I'll go dollar for dollar on the student loan thing too, between a law degree and a master's degree. And I think we have to be cognizant too, that as I've said from the dais and out on the campaign trail many times, our homes are not ATMs. We can't just get cash out of it in order to pay our property taxes every year. So we have to be very careful with the impact on whether it's a young family or a senior on a fixed income. Now, what does the tax bill look like? And we don't have control over the whole thing. The schools, the parks, the library, the county, these are all very valuable and worthwhile ventures, but we have to be careful with our piece of it. So I appreciate the changes that were made tonight, the idea that we can find at least a bit of data with regard to what's the financial impact, but I think we have to have a much larger conversation with our community about affordable housing. What is it? What does it mean? What does our housing stock look like right now? What are the rental opportunities out there? Because we've heard a lot of anecdotes, but there's not a lot of hard data that I've seen yet. What does our housing stock that's available for purchase look like? And as the owner of one of the smaller homes in Downers Grove, I know that there are affordable homes still. Maybe they're not reaching the market that often. And I know there's a lot of talk out there about the McMansions, but there are still smaller and more affordable homes available in Downers Grove. So I think we need to do a lot more investigation, and really get a lot more actual hard data before I'm going to be ready to move forward on this particular issue. If that means setting up another committee, then that's what it means. But I think at this point, I'll appreciate certainly the data that we'll get from the RFP, but there's a lot more that I think we need to dig into as a community and as a council before really determining the right way forward. I think some of the conversations you've had with the county are absolutely fantastic, and I think a regional approach to this might be the right way to go. So it's a little bit of a ramble there, Mayor, but I appreciate the amendment, and I look forward to that information. Thank you.
Chris, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just a few more things. Commissioner Jose, I appreciate the mention on the environmental ads that we did last year for over $1 million. which had nothing to do with maximizing revenue. It was about long-term sustainability, but I think even more so, it was about demonstrating our values as a village as it pertains to environmental sustainability. So I think that's a perfect example of something, and I supported it on both fronts. I wouldn't say no one batted an eye at that, but I felt like there was a pretty fast consensus on something like that, and it just demonstrated to me the values that we had, which is, I think, more than we have the risk to lose by providing a handful of affordable housing units. I kind of alluded to the perspective on what we might lose on 20 units. Using the math, it would be $30,000 a year. Commissioner Davenport mentioned the Meals on Wheels donation that we do every year, the grant that we give every year. That's on consent agenda. We don't even talk about it. It's a $30,000 a year check we write, and which I fully support. But it is something that we also, I think, demonstrates who we are. When you're talking about the math that we're provided on these units, it's almost the exact same amount. So I think the maximized revenue argument is a little bit of a red herring. I think there's lots of ways that we can maximize revenues on this. If we really wanted to, we could figure out ways past, whatever we wanted to make this property bigger and have the opportunity to be worth more. I am so encouraged, though, to hear the desire for a discussion, a broader discussion about this. And Commissioner Davenport, you brought up Fairview. I think that is a topic that is ripe for this council as we look to at what that can be. And I feel like there's a great opportunity. I personally think this Lot 2 could be the great first stepping stone towards that. They will, I think, in the future have a connection, and I look forward to seeing what we get back from these developers and what the real math looks like. I absolutely appreciate the need for data. I personally think that it is available to us. We do traffic counts all the time. It's sample data. We throw rubber things out on the roads and we collect data for a few days and we make all kinds of decisions around that, sample data. I can promise you, I could probably throw a rock and hit a realtor or mortgage banker on the way out of here. We have the data available. We have the pulse of what's happening. And to me, I don't think that's a huge, I could throw one right there. It's not a huge ask, I don't think, that we would need to get the kind of data to inform us. A comprehensive analysis like that was done in 2007, I fully support. But if time is of the essence, I think we can get enough data to make some decent decisions to move this forward and obviously bring this into a broader discussion, which Commissioner Tully, Commissioner Davenport, and everyone else who's excited to talk about that, I'm very, very anxious to do that and look forward to more of that. Thanks, Mayor.
Anyone else? All right, before we vote, I'll add here, it's the one guy that voted no and threw the, what was it, the fly in the ointment, somebody said earlier? It's impossible to argue against the idea that this is making a statement about values. Clearly, you can go with that. But we're talking about 8 units out of 20,000 residential units, and as Commissioner Davenport has said, and as Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit has said, we don't have any current data. We have a lot of anecdotal evidence. But here's the other thing. We are not in, and that is the business of housing. Somebody said, this isn't supposed to be a business. This isn't supposed to be maximizing revenue. Obviously, it is not supposed to be about maximizing revenue or running a business. We're a village, not a business. What we do with that revenue is we give it to Meals on Wheels. What we do with that revenue is we stay in the 5th lowest taxing bodies in DuPage County, which allows seniors to stay here. It makes it attractive for young adults to come here because, frankly, they can't afford to go to Woodridge where the taxes are higher, or Hinsdale where the taxes are higher, or Glen Ellen, or run down the other 32 communities that are ahead of us. Every time we make a decision to expand the scope of what we do, we run the risk of running those that are in this town already or those kids that want to come back in this town out. And this is what worries me about this subject. It's not 8 units, because 0.4% of all the residential units in town is not going to make any difference. Those units are going to get filled whether they're here or not, and we'll instantly have an affordable housing problem. The question is, do we think as a community we are going to get in the business of housing? The county is, and the county, by the way, who is and actually has a DuPage Housing Authority, is sitting there showing up at meetings saying they're not sure what to do about this. Are we going to be in that business or not? I don't think that's a business for us. I think that's a business for a broader area. I think that's a township question or a county question. I just don't see a community like Downers having a meaningful impact on this element. This town is built out. This is a single parcel. It's not lost on me that it's kind of a mission creep thing that worries me. Now, obviously, I'm in the minority up here tonight, so that's not the way this is going to go. And obviously, we will learn some information by getting some multiple bids. But service delivery, the services that everybody in this audience and up on this dais and everyone in their house right now is expecting, is what has the potential to be affected by this. This is a piece of property we're going to sell, and if we don't take the highest, we might get the highest number still. But if we choose not to take the highest number in exchange for this, for a few affordable housing units, we have increased the cost of delivering service to everybody. That's the part that sticks with me. As far as this idea of a longer range conversation, I am all for that, but I would tell you that I still don't think it's about providing housing. I think it has to do with zoning. I think it has to do with ADUs. I think it has to do with fees. I think it has to do with density conversations. When I was at this District 2 meeting, one of the conversations that was an interesting dialogue was, if we're going to take county numbers for income, then we also have to take county stock, right? Not just Village of Downers Grove housing stock. And one of the big challenges that's in front of us is that several of the really affordable housing units, development units within our area, are also sitting in floodplains. This is all linked. None of this is as simple as it's just 8 units. It's more than that. So I can appreciate my colleagues. I thank Chris for what seems like something that's going to gather a lot of momentum in terms of a compromise. That's a good thing. And the input from everybody is valuable. But I hope our conversation down the road is not so much about Downers Grove getting into the business of providing or subsidizing housing, but of providing an environment where making that housing accessible and affordable to build is more likely. That would be my hope for everybody. So, any other comments or questions? Rosa, would you please call the roll on the amended motion?
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport?
Aye.
Commissioner Tully?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right. We have a continuing agenda to tonight, guys. Nobody's getting out of here that early. Hope you all stay. Is there, is there a motion concerning a tax increment financing district?
Mayor, I move to direct staff to take steps to create a tax increment financing district for the Meadowbrook Shopping Center located at the southwest corner of 63rd and Woodward, 2001 63rd Street, 2153 63rd Street, and 6310 to 6400 Woodward Avenue, and to negotiate a redevelopment agreement in accordance with the key terms in this staff report, as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the audience on this potential agreement having to do with Meadowbrook? Comments or questions from council? Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. Since I missed last week, I just thought I'd add a couple of comments. I'm really excited to see this move forward. We have tried to get a redevelopment at Meadowbrook for I don't know how many years now, and it hasn't quite worked. And I think this one, getting off the ground here is really exciting. We've got an opportunity for new outlots, obviously a facelift that the center needs, and we have protected the village in terms of how it's structured. It's all, I think, a big positive. So thank you to the EDC for all of their work. Thank you to staff for all of your work, and looking forward to the end product. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Others? Mike?
I too would like to thank staff and the EDC for their work on this. This is a gateway project. When you get off on 63rd Street coming in from 355, this is one of your first impressions of Downers Grove. So this is a long time coming, and this is something we all ought to get really excited about. So thank you.
Anyone else? All right, well, thank you also to Stelco for choosing to invest in Downers Grove. We appreciate that. I know it was a tough one to work through because it got challenged. The site itself has a lot of challenges. And so to EDC, who's here with us tonight, we appreciate your help in guiding that. Staff, the team there, this has been a long conversation that is going to end up a really good thing for the village. So thank you all. Anyone else? Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit? Aye. Commissioner Davenport?
Aye.
Commissioner Tully?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Mayor Burnett?
Aye. That passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning an inducement resolution?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the Village of Downers Grove, Illinois inducement resolution relating to the possible adoption of the tax increment financing district for the 2023 Meadowbrook TIF district as presented.
Second.
Comments from the audience on the inducement resolution? Sounds like fun, huh? Comments from council? Okay, it's a continuation of the process. Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport?
Aye.
Commissioner Tully?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Mayor Burnett?
Aye. That too passes unanimously. That ends our active agenda. First reading item. We do not have any first reading items tonight. This is where we would normally begin conversation or continue conversation on subjects we weren't going to take action on. We do not have any tonight. Goes to mayor's report. I do not have a report this evening. So council member reports. This is a portion of the meeting where council members report out on other goings-on in town, other entities they're working with. I went right last time, didn't I?
You did.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. And they give us updates on things that they think we all should hear about. So with that, I will start with Commissioner Tully.
Thank you, Mayor. There's only 2 days left until Rotary Grove Fest. Streets are already closing. The whole town gets together. It's really the best, largest block party it is. We talk about bringing the community together in a place of welcoming and belonging. I hope to see all of you there. And the weather looks like it's going to be spectacular. A little chilly at night, but nothing wrong with that. So come on down and look forward to seeing everybody. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Chris?
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Greg?
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Mike?
No report.
Danny?
No report, Mayor, but I would like to check Commissioner Gilmartin's pockets for rocks on the way out.
Second.
Leslie?
Just a reminder, if you haven't gotten to visit the Legacy Wall at the Downers Grove Public Library, remember that will be up through the end of the month. It's up on the second floor, behind the desk. So make sure you check that out. It's beautiful. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you. With that, we have a manager's report, which I think is going to be delivered by Mr. Baker. An update on our village facilities, I hope.
Yes, absolutely. We are extremely pleased with the progress that's been made in recent weeks, and you'll see a video showcasing that progress in just a moment. But the steel structure has been constructed and the roof decking installed, which has allowed work within the building to progress, specifically mechanical and plumbing systems within the basement and even on some of the upper floors. And that work will continue to advance. Overall, just happy to report that this project remains on schedule and under budget.
like at the end, you had Doug jump out from behind a counter or something.
That is our report for now, Mayor.
Thanks, Dave, and thanks, Mike. All right, we are going to take a short recess. We'll be reconvening next door, committee room, for a continuation of our long-range planning, which is meeting 3 or 4 in about a 10-meeting process over 2 or 3 months. It ends in the fall and sort of drives us ultimately to a budget. This is going to be a little weird, but raise your hand if you're planning on staying. You're welcome to. Everybody's welcome to stay. So, all right, you guys can make that work. We might need some adjustments to space. Okay, we just want to make sure we have room for everybody and seats for everyone. That's all. So thank you for that. All right, about 5 minutes in the committee room. Thank you.
That was so subtle. I don't know.
Great secret cue. Okay, June 20th, continuation of our LRP process. For those that may be joining us first time, we go through what we call long-range planning. We call it long-range planning. It's an annual process. It goes through a series of meetings. Sometimes we add some, depending on how the dialogue or conversation goes. But ultimately, what this does is it gets down here and it tells us a couple of things. It tells us what the likely work plan of this council, so for the next 2.5 years-ish, is. And it often ends up driving us to a very, to use the word undisputed, maybe is a good choice of words. It's sort of almost a default budget by the time we've gotten to that point. We've all talked about the trends and issues that are in front of us, the things that are important to each one of us. We've tried to zero in on how much of that has support from the council as a whole. And that sort of drives the process so we know what we're working on the next few years. So with that, I will let Dave start in. We are on the second meeting of trends and issues. This is where we haven't decided anything, except we've tried to understand some of the things that are in front of us.
Thank you, Mayor. I've taken a lot of my introductory comments, which I'm grateful for. Just a reminder, one of the things that's unique about our long-range planning process, it is a combination of financial planning and strategic planning at the same time. So we talk about our strategic goals in the context of financial realities. So it's worked well for us in the last 10 years or so in this format. As Mayor Barnett said, it's a series of meetings that takes place through the summer. We're on meeting number 3, which is our second discussion of key trends and issues. Tonight, in the open, in the part of the meeting in the other room, we heard council members start to talk about priority action items that may be important to them. And while that may come up tonight, we have dedicated 2 meetings in the schedule for priority actions. So things like affordable housing programs, I suspect will be introduced July 18th and August 1st in that time frame. But it is important to make sure we have an understanding of some of the key trends and issues that staff and the council have identified that may affect our financial future. So tonight, staff is going to present 5 of those items, and they are in the report that was on the website and the agenda material and also handed out tonight. The first key trend and issue has to do with our commuter parking system and our parking fund. The village owns and operates a handful of surface parking lots that serve our 3 train stations. We also own and maintain a structured parking deck in our downtown. Since the pandemic, occupancy or usage of those parking facilities has been down and stayed down. And it follows then that revenue in the parking fund is also down. And yet we still need to be in the business of maintaining the parking deck and those parking lots to meet our maintenance standards. Pretty simple set of circumstances here. We do have some data on the usage of those parking resources in the Main Street Station campus, at the Belmont train station, and at the Fairview train station. And there's a really good graph in the written report. This is a shorthand version of it here, but really what it shows is in all 3 parking campuses, the occupancy is quite low. We looked at data from the first quarter of this year, both average usage and max usage. Average, Main Street is sitting right at about 50%, with the daily fee payers averaging about a little over 50%, and those holding quarterly permits to park under 50%. The story at Belmont and Fairview on average is they are significantly lower and not even reaching 50% usage. The little red marks here on this graph are a shorthand indication of the maximum usage. So on the peak usage in quarter number 1, you can see that Belmont and Fairview were under 50%, and Main Street was up around 60 to 75% max usage or peak usage. So that is a very brief summary of the trends and issues, and what staff is suggesting for council consideration for inclusion in our long-range plan are these handful of steps here. Number 1, we should consider eliminating the quarterly permit model at Belmont and Fairview. So shifting that to just pay for the day if you need to park there. This is something that other suburban communities on this train line have gone to with some success. We think it sets up well for the Belmont and Fairview campuses given their usage. We're recommending further monitoring of Main Street. We're not recommending going to a daily permit or daily fee only model here because you can see these max usage numbers are such that that might cause a capacity issue on some days. Fairview, the numbers are so low, we think, and this will relate to our next topic, that we should consider looking at converting the Fairview major parking lots into other land uses that may help us achieve other village goals. And of course, we need to continue to maintain our parking deck and parking lots. In broad strokes, we feel that if we make this shift to just the daily fee in the Belmont and Fairview, both the revenues will drop, but also our expenses related to operating the quarterly permit system will drop. We think that'll put the fund at about equilibrium with revenues and expenses equal, and we think it will free up resources that we now spend managing the parking system into other areas. Mayor, I'll pause there to see if there's council questions or dialogue on this topic.
So for those in the room, historically, many of the village operations we use what's called fund accounting. And so many of our operations are sort of, in a way you could think of them as self-funding. Stormwater is another example, for instance. On the parking side of things, we have maintained and improved our parking lots over the years, largely from funds from parkers. And that doesn't seem sustainable anymore. And that's the question that's kind of in front of us. So Dave's done a good job of laying it out. I think the logical next steps, in my mind, seem totally reasonable, but what's the rest of the council have to say? Martin?
So thank you. A couple of questions for Dave. I don't know how far along they are in their process, but what has Naperville's experience been looking like since they switched largely to the daily fees and government permits?
No reported issues yet because I think it doesn't become effective until January. So that's part of the monitoring to see how they're doing. Now, Lombard
come on that.
Lombard made the switch. I haven't heard anything negative from that.
Okay. The second thing, if there are any issues, the converting the Fairview parking is a very intriguing option. Are there any issues there with respect to Burlington Northern and any other commitments that we have with them?
Yes, there's an arrangement we have right now that within the next 2 years has a reopener to discuss the future of that arrangement where we're obligated to provide parking for commuters on that lot. Enza has more of the details, but it's my understanding we're within about a 2-year window for sort of a reopener discussion on that property.
Okay, thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, can you remind me what the quarterly permits are? And is it different at the 3 different train stations? It's not different?
I don't have that information off the top of my head, but one of our staff members can probably pull it up on a computer here. We'll get it before you leave.
I think they're $93 a quarter, right? And the only difference between the 3 is that Maine, you have to be a Downers Grove resident, right? And the other 2, I don't think you do.
Main Street is for Downers Grove residents only, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
As a commuter, I, have these things in my brain.
And you have to apply when you're born in order to get on the list.
Well, it's funny because I actually did apply to the Main Street, and mine came up during COVID, and I was like, well, this is not a useful time for me anymore. So, the question I actually did have though is, so are you thinking of converting the full Fairview parking lot into other uses, or do you think you would still maintain a small portion for parking. And the main reason I ask is I know we've been struggling with that north parking lot to get access to redo the stormwater issues there. It's just been a lingering problem, and it, ekes into some of the other businesses that are right there. And so just to make sure that we do have some parking that might not potentially be underwater on a rainy day. That was just my only question.
Yeah, at this point, these are just concepts of being a plan, but I don't see a scenario, I don't think staff sees a scenario where we eliminate all parking. That pose some significant challenges to the Fairview train station and all the reasons you said. And a lot of that, I'm just jumping ahead here, but I suspect the council may tell us in the next couple of months to pursue some planning efforts in the Fairview area, and those sort of detail level questions would be at the forefront.
Sure, yeah. But in terms of, and also, do you know on the quarterly permits for Belmont and Fairview, kind of what those numbers look like? There's not currently a waiting period anymore at Fairview, right? And there's a low one at Belmont?
There's definitely no waiting list at Fairview, and Belmont is always right at either no waiting list or just a handful of waiting lists. So effectively, it's just...
Right, and so then given everything is pretty much under 50% capacity, it seems pretty reasonable then to move to those daily fees. So, yeah, it seems reasonable to me.
Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. Dave, sticking with the Fairview theme, obviously the number of parkers are down. Do we have any information, and if we don't, could we get information on ridership out of Fairview? I'm curious as to the long-term viability of the stop. And it concerns me because I know it was one of the pieces that made the neighborhood attractive to me when we moved here. I'm 3/4 of a mile or so from the Main Street stop, which is great, but I'm probably a fourth of that to the Fairview stop. Now, they've made a number of changes to the schedule that have been detrimental to anybody trying to get downtown, which is why I've been riding out of Main Street for the last 4 or 5 years.
Me too.
But it makes me concerned for, so what are the property value impacts in the area, but then also how does it impact some of the other things that we might be looking at in terms of expanding some of these parcels, business attraction, things like that.
We can get that data for you.
I'm interested in that as well.
Schedule, as you said, is also a major component on viability of that station moving forward.
Absolutely.
Mike?
Sure. Well, I'll just piggyback a little bit on what you're saying. I see, jumping ahead, what we're going to do with the Fairview area plan implementation is being a vital step in hopefully saving the train station. Especially when we look at that plan and staff has made us aware that station and the Pepperidge Farm property are really the catalysts for the things that we want to do there. So it's a symbiotic relationship and something we need to get going on before it's too late. Question about the fees. So what's the financial impact of going to all daily fees?
We think it lowers revenues and expenses to put us at about equilibrium in that fund, and we think it frees up resources that we now spend administering the permit program and other enforcement that could be freed up to other village initiatives, and it really sort of a shift from the parking fund to the general fund as well. So
it's a substantial reduction
in
administrative costs.
It is.
So just wanted to get that out there.
Just to follow up on my permit, so we confirmed at 93. Okay. When was...
For residents.
Pardon?
Non-residents.
For residents.
Okay.
Non-residents pay $134 per quarter.
But they can't be at Main. Yeah, 143. And do we, I think I read in here that any price increase would have to go through Metro or at least have input from them?
Yes.
Do you know when the last time we increased the permit price?
It's been a while.
Okay. 5 years?
Maybe 5 years.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It used to be 90, I think.
It was minimal.
It might have been longer.
Okay.
As you might suspect, they have a disincentive to that.
Right. However, we're in a situation where we've got 40% permit users and 100% permit keepers. I'm not sure.
And Metra in general is a big proponent of shifting away from quarterly permits into daily parking. They've been asking for that for years.
Any anecdotal reason why, or?
Well, because in the pre-COVID world and the parking demands, it was such that I think previous councils felt the permit system was of value to
Got
community
it,
members.
got it. Yeah.
Mark?
The only other anecdote I'll throw out there is if, obviously, there's lingering impacts of the pandemic on ridership, there's no question about it. Some has come back, but with hybrid work schedules lingering for the foreseeable future, I don't think we're going to see this change. But for those of you who think it might eventually change, we also have to take into account the fact that just the way people commute has changed tremendously. We didn't have ride shares 10 years ago, and now you have people that are not necessarily taking a car out of a garage, putting it in a lot where it sits all day long until they get off the train and then they get back in the car. They're seeing a lot of different people change the way they get to the train station, so the cars aren't just sitting in a lot all day long, which is a good thing for a lot of reasons. But I think that's not going to change either. You're going to see more and more alternative transportation, fewer cars. Thus, long-term, you're actually seeing more municipalities convert traditional parking into other uses just because of the changes in the way people get around.
Does anybody on the council see a negative to this or feel like we shouldn't kind of continue down this road?
I mean, assuming there's available spots for all who need them at Fairview and Belmont, which it sounds like it's plentiful, seems to make sense to me.
Historically, there's been not enough spots, period. Go back pre-pandemic, there were not enough spots anywhere.
Sure.
Waiting lists were in the years, measured in the years.
Yeah.
It's just a very different world right now, and where our funding model is not going to continue to work.
Yeah, but like Greg, when I moved here, it was 3 train stations, and Fairview was a lot better. So I think there's a bigger discussion around what that impact may or may not be. Yeah.
Sure. All right, before we move on, so these meetings are obviously a little more discussionary, sort of head nodding questions, not necessarily definitive answers, decisions made. Anybody from the audience have a particular comment or question about this? We may not answer a question, maybe something we just have to throw in the hopper, but any comments about this subject? Please.
When you talk about using the parking area for other uses, what kind of other uses do you have in mind, or is that just discussion for the future?
That's exactly what it is, discussion for the future. Please.
I'm thinking, how would the village collect daily pay? We don't have meters. Would you be putting meters in, or those boxes then?
We already have ways to collect daily fees, and it would probably require the expansion of those systems, but we have those in place already. It's a pay-by-phone app as well as a pay at the station at the location of the parking lots.
Still not requiring a lot of extra staffing. The staff work would move to
Correct.
that.
Okay, we'll move on.
So we had a couple of great segues into, okay, what about Fairview? And that's one of the reasons that staff is presenting these two issues in this order, because there's so much crossover. The next key trend and issue has to do with the Fairview area plan implementation. So the thing that's driving this is, if you've been out there, you probably noticed that the streets and the street lights in the Fairview area, the area near the train station, are in need of repair or replacement, and frankly, have been for quite a while now. We actually have in our community investment plan a project that would start this year to actually go through and start making the plans for those construction improvements. Well, here's the challenge. Our comprehensive plan has identified the Fairview area as a special focus area, has a series of recommendations to revitalize and change that area. So it just follows that before we invest in permanent design improvements on the streets and the streetlights, if we are going to consider implementing the recommendations in the comprehensive plan, now's the time. And that's what we're putting out for the council. Those recommendations in our comprehensive plan sub-area or focus area should be considered prior to planning these improvements. So the staff recommendation for actions moving forward are simply to actually, prepare the implementation of those recommendations. Now, I assume, based on the conversation we're having here already tonight and my individual conversations with the council, I'm pretty sure this is going to show up as a priority action item in June and July for consideration. we need to do a lot of work as we move forward on this plan. One of the first things we would need to do is define the area. I was talking to Commissioner Davenport yesterday following this issue. If you look at our comprehensive plan, it already has a map of the area. It's very jagged edges, very precise mapping. That's probably based on the comprehensive plan discussions of 2017, and it probably had a basis in existing zoning districts. That's why that goes like that. One of the first things we'd have to do if we undertake this plan is make sure we all know what we're talking, what area we're talking about, define the area. And then we would probably hit issues like, what are the proper zoning regulations for this area? What's the proper zoning mapping and districts? We may even be in the business of creating new districts that are unique to the Fairview area. We'd have to start talking about financial policies and incentives to help the private sector with redevelopment opportunities. And the same thing for public improvements. What are the financial policies? What are the financial practices that we would use to pay for not only the streets and streetlights we're talking about, but streetscapes and landscape improvements, et cetera. I see my friends from the EDC. We'll be working with them on this plan to talk about business attraction and retention efforts and economic development tools, economic development funding, putting together streetscape and landscape improvement plans, what types of improvements would go in the area and when. And here the question that was asked, what would we do if we decided that we would redevelop all or a portion of the parking lot that we now own? What would the uses be? How would we go about paying for that? Those kind of things. So if this seems like a lot to be considered in one plan, it is. This is very much like the things we undertook in the late 90s, early 2000s in the downtown area. So the planning initiative here is to get council to say, yes, this is in our long-range plan, this is a project we'd like to undertake, but we just want to set expectations. This is a multi-year planning effort and certainly a multi-year implementation effort. The downtown that we enjoy today is the product of about 25 years worth of work. So with that there, I'll hand it back to you for council questions and comments.
Well, so the issue that's in front of us is this previously planned investment, right? And if we think that that makes sense to do now, or do we think we probably want to engage in a much broader conversation about the area and therefore put that investment off? So that's the issue in front of us. I think Dave's read of all of us in our various conversations is probably spot on. I think there's probably not a lot of point in going forward with STO 62 because likely we're going to end up, at the very least, in July and August talking about it in some heavy detail. So that's I think it's a good decision, good trend suggestion. Anybody else want to jump in on that? Makes sense.
Maybe one.
Yeah, go
point.
ahead, please, Chris.
I assume, from a safety standpoint, any of the repairs on the road and potholes and stuff are exclusive of that.
Oh, you've been talking to our risk manager.
Well,
yes.
yeah.
Yes, we'll keep that area safe and maintained without doing the rebuild as much as we can. Yes, our commitment to safety while we go through this.
We just call it traffic calming.
All right. Any comments or questions from the audience? This one?
Yeah.
Please, go ahead.
As a member of Greener Grove, I'm interested in the environmental issues. And I'm wondering if you would consider, for all lighting, to have it shielded so it would be down facing, the light would go down so we'd have dark sky.
Stay with this process. Keep coming.
Too early?
Keep coming. Too early. But those are, if we go down the path, I think most of us want to go down. Those are conversations that will be had.
I'd rather be too early than too late.
Yeah, you bet.
And the other thing is anything possibly that we build should be solar powered. Too early.
No, keep coming.
Not too late.
All right. Well, Dave, continue.
Earlier today, Doug and I practiced flipping this board over, so I'd like to have Doug come up and help me flip this board over. It worked really well.
Have Doug stand right there while you...
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, was it?
It was.
Charlie Brown?
Chris moved from there to there.
Trying back here.
Look at that.
Can't wait for the village hall.
All right. All right, so 3 more key trends and issues to go here tonight, Mayor and Council. We'll start with, or continue with, stormwater fund sustainability. So the village owns and maintains an extensive stormwater management system. Think ditches and detention basins and pipes and conveyance, all sorts of things. We've been in the business of increasing its effectiveness for many, many years, but particularly since the late 2000s, like from 2007 and 2008. Since 2008, we have constructed about 90 significant capital projects for over $50 million worth of investment. This map over here behind Mayor Barnett, which is also in the report, shows the location of that. Our goal is pretty straightforward. We want to manage stormwater in a way that safely conveys rain and stormwater runoff when we do experience those storms. So if you take a look at the report, you'll see the village's attempt to try to describe what that means. It's highly conceptualized. It's the idea that 95% of the properties that we safely maintain and manage the runoff for 95% of the properties and over 90% of the storms. That is really what we're trying to say is there's always going to be a storm that exceeds the system's capacity, no matter how big you build the system. And there are some challenges with a handful of properties that are located in the floodplain, and those projects are really a challenge and beyond the scope of this approach that we've been using. So with that as a background, the capital projects have been based on 3 iterations of multi-year plans. Back in the 2000s, we had the Watershed Infrastructure Improvement Plan, then we went to the Stormwater Project Analysis, and then we got really creative and just called it the 2022 to 2024 Capital Plan. So those 3 plans have served us well and helped us make these decisions on where to put these capital projects. Well, here's the issue right now. Good news is the projects that were included in that 3-year plan that we just recently put together, we are on schedule and they will be completed by 2024. Which means that upon completion of that plan, we only have 5 years remaining in our stormwater utility plan. So for those who've been following this for a while, in 2013 we changed how we fund stormwater management systems, going to a fee-based approach. And at that time we put together what seemed to be a really long horizon plan, a 15-year plan. Well, you know what? We're getting to the point now where when this stormwater capital plan is finished, we only have 1 5-year planning horizon left, which is just kind of crazy for those who've been on this journey since the early 2000s.
Brings a tear to my eye.
Commissioner Tully, I think introduced this issue in 2001, give or take. So we really need 1 more 5-year capital plan to get us to the end of our initial planning period for the stormwater utility. So between now and 2029, we're actually going to slow the pace of new capital projects. So the number and scope of capital projects will go down. And the money we spend on maintaining all those projects that we put in the ground will continue to go up. It is important that we maintain all of our infrastructure system. So I won't go through it in detail here, but we have a nice graph in the materials that show our expenses and revenues in the current year. You'll see that expenses exceed the revenues this year. We're spending down bond proceeds, the bonds that we issued a couple years ago. And our revenue's sitting at about $6.2 million. By 2029, we'll have a balanced situation with just over $10 million in expenses and revenues. And again, the majority of those expenses will be in maintaining the expansive system. So that's the frame-up of the trends and issues. For recommendations moving forward, we seem to be in a position now where we can use our standard approach to infrastructure planning, our 5-year community investment plan. We think it's a good vehicle for the last iteration of our stormwater plan. We need to continue to increase those maintenance activities as called for in our multi-year plan. And we do need to continue to implement the elements of the financial side of that plan, which call for 8.7% annual increases in the stormwater fee. Still have a lot of ground to cover here in those last 6 or 7 years. So stick with that financial plan. Pretty straightforward. And with that, I'll turn it over to the mayor. Any questions and comments?
Any questions? Comments?
Just a comment, yeah, I'm just thrilled to see kind of the progress that we've made and that we're really getting towards the end of that 15-year plan. I think we've done an excellent job with our capital projects and really getting serious about maintenance, and I think it really shows when we have some of those heavy rains, so definitely in favor of all of this, so thank you.
Mike?
Sure. So just a comment that 3.1 capital, that's the concern for me is that I'd like to make sure that maintenance number doesn't end up being entirely exceeded. And I'm wondering in this last tranche of things that we're going to do, if there are potentially some other creative solutions that can be done to help alleviate some of the flooding issues that we have in those targeted areas where it might reduce, it may not reduce our cost in doing things, but it might reduce some of the long-term maintenance cost. And because of all the success we've had in the last several years, there's certainly been some impact of all that work on the remaining tranche of things that need to be done. And so I would probably advocate for take a little deeper dive into those projects and the solutions that are proposed there to see if there's something we can do to hopefully target reducing the future maintenance costs.
Commissioner Davenport and I had a great phone conversation on this yesterday, and we are aligned between that comment as a council member and how the staff has approached this for years. One of the things we say about all of our infrastructure systems is we first try to meet our service standard, our level of service, and the second thing we do is try to minimize and operate with the lowest overall life cycle costs. So we will be digging into those details when the annual plans come out. You see it on the board. The CIP, we'll look into dive into those details.
Anyone else? I'll just add the thank you from this council to the councils in 2000 and 2001 and 2002 who said we got to get our arms around this because it was a disaster. And a whole lot of really good work has been done. And as Dave pointed out, it's sometimes a hard thing to describe. What does it mean to solve a stormwater problem? We all know it can rain on already wet ground, right? But the evidence over the last 6 to 8 years or so, since 13, I think, really, when we had a kind of an opportunity to see things in action, has been that a lot of that work has been really, really effective at minimizing the actual danger and risk of flooding and, frankly, dealing with it quickly when it comes. It's not the same as zero flooding. A lot of good work from both staff and previous councils. Questions, comments? Okay. Continue, Dave.
Next is financial assistance for not-for-profit agencies. Commissioner Gilmartin and others brought this up in the previous part of tonight's meeting. The village has been providing assistance to the DuPage Senior Citizen Council for their Meals on Wheels program for many, many years. And we've been funding it at about $30,000 a year since 2016. And earlier this year, we received, like we always do, the request for funding from the DSCC. And it has been the trend, their request has exceeded the amount that the village has provided to them. So you may recall, if you follow some of our council meetings, Commissioner Gilmartin brought up this issue. Other council members agreed that we should be thinking about trying to meet their request. But there's a broader issue going on here, and that is there are so many other not-for-profits that in our community that provide valuable services to our stakeholders, residents, etc. And the DSCC funding should probably be considered in the context of all the other not-for-profits in our community and their requests for funding. So this is really a continuation of a discussion that was started just a couple of months ago at a council meeting. The staff take on this is that if the council's interested in having this discussion, we should really look to our past to help determine our future, and that is to explore the reinstatement of some new form of a community grants program. Prior to 2010, the village did operate a community grants program where a certain designated amount of money was made available in a competitive environment for not-for-profits to provide a variety of different services, arts, culture, et cetera, and projects for our community. And those were considered by the council, and then grants were given out. And so if the council's interested in this, this could be one of our projects moving forward. We could prepare a grants program and then, of course, prepare annual budgets accordingly. Mayor?
Thanks, Dave. This is one of the things I think I was hassling you about when we brought it up. We do have way more opportunities to help tons of really good organizations in town. And so I think we should explore this idea of reinstating the community grants program. With that, though, comes the idea that it isn't sort of a random number. There's a lot more to that. Martin, you probably have the most experience in the room on this subject. But it becomes, people have to understand that there is a funding source and that there's likely going to be people who are not recipients who think they should be. And that we have to have a system which is transparent and available, and which people understand in order to actually process that. It can't turn into a situation where the three people that know some people end up accessing a pile of general village funds. So I think that's worth pursuing. It was a different world when we sort of got rid of some of that. We were getting hammered, struggling just to keep afloat. It's a different world today. So I think it's worth pursuing, but just I really kind of, from my perspective, I think it's super important that it become a community grants program, not a existing council pick your 5 or 7 favorite groups. So. Martin?
Sorry, I'll apologize for the history lesson in advance. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I served as the chair of the community grants program. And the good thing about this is we don't have to make something up. We already have a system and a program and criteria. It went away because, as the mayor mentioned, in 2008, 2009, it was a pretty bad recession back then, and a number of things went away just because there wasn't means to support them, which is unfortunate. We're in a different time. It was a terrific program. A lot of not-for-profits in town benefited from it. It was an annual budgeted amount that then a group of appointed volunteers from the community would basically vet proposals from different qualifying not-for-profit organizations in town and would make decisions on what they would receive in terms of a community grant. And it was, for some, it was a staple that kept them going in the community for years. So when it all went away, and a lot of things went away, it was a bad time. That was rough. That was rough. I would completely support reinstating the community grants program, and then obviously have a conversation with the rest of the council about what that looks like for a budgeted line item. And it also then takes away the criticism that would come up from time to time is, well, why are you favoring this not-for-profit and that not-for-profit? Because we're not favoring anybody. Here are the criteria. A group of your neighbors will hear you out and make decisions, and then obviously ultimately the council has to approve the recommendations from the Community Grants Commission. The Community Grants Commission, consistent with almost all of our boards, well, just about all of our boards and commissions, are not final authorities. They are recommending boards. So the Community Grants Commission would make a recommendation that then the council would act upon. But I'm saying all that because I think it's important to understand that there was a way that this worked really well. So I don't think it would take a lot of time and effort to sort of put it back into place, but that's just my 2 cents.
Other council members? Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. This is one of those things that actually predates my arrival on the council, so I haven't had a chance to really look through, what the various, eligibility criteria and whatnot look like. So that it'll be, I think, a good conversation. I am a little bit concerned, to borrow a phrase from the mayor from earlier tonight, about mission creep. One of the things that makes Meals on Wheels stand out is that it's a public-private partnership, and it has been. It was designed that way from the very beginning. And so in my mind, that's a little different than your sort of run-of-the-mill not-for-profit. So I will be very interested in what those eligibility criteria look like and maybe about some conversations and how we might modify them. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Others? Leslie?
Yeah, I am absolutely interested to kind of explore the plan. I have a little bit of similar concerns as Commissioner Jose. Just interested in kind of looking at that budget, and where it comes from, and kind of those eligibility criteria I think are probably going to be the determining factor. Really knowing that, again, if we can address issues of folks early on, right, having access to resources. Again, we talked before about, maybe not having the $30,000 for a year for giving people a little bit more access to affordable housing. If you have affordable housing, you probably don't need all of these services quite as much. So for me, it's going to be part of that larger conversation of kind of balancing, making sure that, there's an affordability aspect to living here, but also making sure that we are taking care of those nonprofits that are doing really important things in the community. So I'm interested in learning more.
What else? Mike?
Yeah, I'm excited to see this come back. I remember it well, and it was appropriate then. It's appropriate now, and I think it's also worth reminding people, as you've done, Commissioner Tully, that this wasn't ended, and you mentioned as well, Mayor, that this wasn't ended because people thought it wasn't working, that it wasn't needed. In fact, it was ended at a time when probably it was needed even more. It was ended because we just didn't have the funds to continue it anymore, and we're definitely in a better place now. And there's plenty of precedent for this sort of thing, and I'm too interested in looking at that criteria. I know we have a great model that was...
Not to say it can't be updated.
Yeah, right, but it's there. So this isn't reinventing the wheel. This is looking at something we used to do and knowing it had a really positive effect on our community, and we definitely should be bringing it back. So needless to say, I'm excited.
There are...
I'm sorry. Can I make
Just
a comment as a community member?
Yep, we'll get there.
Okay.
I don't remember the exact number, but I remember when, a year and a half or so ago, when Human Services Commission did some study on this, Chris, you may be part of that.
Yeah.
Not only is there need, but this idea that Greg and Leslie bring up of creep and challenges, and there's need, but there are literally hundreds.
Yeah.
Literally hundreds of organizations that are providing really valuable services. So don't kid yourself, it'll be a challenge to figure out what it looks like and what it's structured like. Even if we had a model in the past, there's just a ton of people that would be seeking opportunities for help.
I just want to add, to just give it more context, it wasn't, these were not-for-profits of a variety of different flavors. Quite a few of them were art-based, performing arts, a lot of different projects that, there were a couple of theater companies that wouldn't have existed but for some of the assistance they had. So it was a very, I remember it was quite broad in what was encompassed. And there were criteria, and I don't remember them anymore, and they can certainly be updated, because anything from 2008 I'm sure has to be updated. But it had a lot of benefits to the community beyond what I was sensing the conversation was going. So it's even broader than that. There was a sense of pride and belonging in some of the activities that were supported that really benefited the entire community.
Chris?
Yeah, so I wholeheartedly support this. I think one of the concerns I would have, and I think we're all open to updating the model, so I'm certainly not saying this is the case, but I think it was funded based on, Mike, what was the?
Hotel tax.
Hotel tax, right. So we look at the EDC, which was also based on that, and then when things went south, we as a council decided to fund that directly, correct? So I think I would want to look to this. Funding sources open for discussion there, but I think a commitment to this beyond sort of so much variable, and look, hotel tax is hotel tax, and I understand that, but I think we should be looking at this as more of a line item rather than as variable as what we've seen. So that would be my input. I agree the criteria is very, very important. Diversity in organizations, I think, would be important, and I think this would be a great, great thing to bring back, and I'm all for it.
One of the reasons we got off of that EDC funding model was certainly because of the environment, but the other one was because we decided it was frankly just important enough.
Right. Right.
And so, to your point, I think, in my mind, if we think that this is an important enough thing, then we pick a number.
Yep.
It's just something you budget. Anything else before we go to the audience? Audience comments, questions?
I just had a comment.
Yeah, please.
As a community member, I think, I would feel very comfortable with a broader base of charities or nonprofits that we supported, bringing that into the community. I would wonder, though, a little bit about going from Meals on Wheels, which is primarily, food-based, and thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and, food and shelter first, and then going out. So I don't know if in the past that the choosing of which ones to give to had any type of ranking, or just as a community member, I would love to see some of the money at least be earmarked towards food, shelter, basic kind of needs and supports, to make sure that we don't go right from Meals on Wheels to all the theater and the art, which I wholeheartedly support.
Yeah, I would,
Theater and art.
if I could just add, I think one of the advantages of now having a full-time social worker is we have a lot of information on what services folks are looking for. So I think we can tap into that fairly quickly, and I think that's a great suggestion, looking at it in terms of need. On the Human Services Committee that I served on, it was, a lot of that was reviewed, probably due for an update, but I think that's an important point.
As we, what I think you're hearing is 7 council members that think this is something worth digging into. So things like that, we'll need to be reminded of that when we get into details and really start hashing this out.
I just got a quick question. To clarify, so we currently give $30,000 to senior services that goes directly to Meals on Wheels, and that doesn't even cover how many meals they provide in Downers. And then it says, other not-for-profits provide services and would also benefit. Are we not giving to any other of those not-for-profits?
Correct.
And what are some of those? Just a couple of them that we
Oh.
don't fund that do provide services?
Family Shelter Services is the first one that comes to my mind. Sharing Connections is another one. PADS is another one. Hope Front Door Fish.
Gotcha.
It's a
lot.
Yeah, when you go back to that report that Chris and others helped put together, I think the number was in the 400 range of entities, not all Downers based per se,
Right.
but entities who were providing services of some kind to Downers Grove residents.
Gotcha. Thank you.
There's a really good database on DuPage County's website. The acronym is CRIS, C-R-I-S. They have a great listing of all sorts of not-for-profits, not just in our area, but obviously throughout the county.
Thank you.
All right, any other on this subject? Okay, let's continue, David.
Fifth and final trends and issues section here is environmental sustainability plan. In March of this year, the Village Council directed and then adopted the Greenest Region Compact Resolution, which is support of some fundamental principles regarding environmental sustainability. It's a great discussion of the council in that time that led to us adopting that resolution. We put together a report prior to the council adoption of that resolution that tried to understand what environmental sustainability activities and actions does the village take, and how do they align with the goals, objectives, and strategies of the Greenest Region Compact framework. It turns out we take many actions in support of our longstanding goal of stewards of environmental sustainability. And also there was a great deal of alignment between what we do and the GRC framework. 94% of the GRC goals were supported by at least one action the village has taken in the last several years, 57% of their objectives, and 51% of their strategies. So, at the time this was presented to the council back in March, There was a question of should we adopt the resolution, yes or no? That was answered yes, we did that. But there was also a question of, okay, once we've adopted the GRC resolution, should there be any changes into how we handle environmental sustainability actions and policies? We're looking for that policy discussion from the council here tonight. It was started back in March and was identified as an issue that should take place during long-range planning. So the 4 previous issues we presented tonight have been pretty straightforward in a sense that staff had pretty much put together a package set of recommendations, and we heard tonight affirmation that those are the strategies and actions that should go right into our plan that the council will likely adopt later this year. But this discussion, we really need more direct council policy discussion and council direction so we know what to put in the plan moving forward. So we are looking for policy direction tonight on how we should implement, what action should we be taking in support of the GRC resolution. And we put together a couple of options here. One option is really no change to our operations and policies. Turns out our actions comport pretty well with the GRC framework. No change. That's option 1. Just keep going. Option 2 is just a little bit of an enhancement, has to do with enhanced reporting. One of the things we learned in the first quarter of this year is while we do a lot of things, we don't really talk about it too much, and there was no centralized reporting. The report we put together, I think, was comprehensive and well received. So option 2 would be continue with that enhanced reporting. So as we take actions in support, let's make sure we note it, report it out to the council, tell the community about it. Options 3A and 3B would have us move from current practice of not having a formal sustainability plan to actually preparing and implementing a sustainability plan. Option 3A would be a sustainability plan with a small scope. So now think about putting together a plan that would be very targeted. We take a couple of goals and objectives from the GRC framework. We focus on those. We put together a plan for that targeted area. Maybe this is a conversation that primarily happens between the staff and the council, much like we have so far in this discussion. Option 3B is putting together a sustainability plan with a larger scope and a larger scale. So now think about taking all of the GRC framework and building a very large plan that might affect many policies, many operations, very comprehensive approach. Perhaps this would be expanded from just staff and council interactions to board and commission interaction. Maybe the Environmental Concerns Commission, maybe another group or ad hoc group that would help us put together this sustainability plan. So really, options 3A and 3B have us putting together a formal plan. It's just a question of how big of a plan. And what goes along with that is the amount of resources required to put that plan together and implement it. If it stays very small, we can probably just operate with current staff members. The larger it goes, we might need some help with a consultant to help us put together the plan and implement it. If it keeps going larger than that, we may be in a position to have to hire a full-time staff member with expertise in environmental policy, environmental sciences, environmental planning, something like that. It should be noted that we have reported out on the cost of this, right? We certainly have financial benefits that have inured to us over the years, and you can see some of that in the report that's already out. We don't have any of that quantified yet because we don't know what might be in this plan. We certainly will moving forward if the council were to direct us. So while I think a lot of us want to jump right in and start talking about key elements of the sustainability plan or what have you, what we're really looking for tonight is what should we put in the plan? How should we approach the long-range plan? So we're looking for council members to tell us where on this continuum are you. In fact, for helping to get through this conversation, we'll probably just put the council member sort of where are you on this, and then that'll help direct staff and what the plan looks like going forward. There.
Pretty good introduction. This is a conversation we all knew we needed to have. We have to figure out what this looks like. What does the effort that this council is going to direct staff put in environmental sustainability look like, right? Nobody is going to say this isn't important, we shouldn't do it. It is simply a prioritization effort that we're having to decide. So that's part of our conversation tonight. So one of the things that is in my mind in this thing is, I'll start the conversation, everybody else can weigh in a minute, but you can't fix what you don't measure, is generally true. And so at the very least, we absolutely have to, I think, do enhanced reporting. I think one of the things that we found is that we weren't really reporting as much. And Martin, you might remember there was a time when we did a little bit of reporting, and we kind of got away from that. And so we wouldn't even be able 2 years ago as council members to say what it was we were or were not doing, much less evaluate whether it was effective, right? So that's where I'd like to start. The other thing that sits in my head is, without this plan in place and without the reporting that we were doing, the net result was, because we had placed for many years a priority on this subject, and we modified it a year or two ago, we ended up being pretty commended for the work we were doing by a variety of groups. Mayor's Caucus, the GRC, obviously there's work to be done, 47.3%, depending on which math you're using. But without any particular effort on the GRC in terms of focus, corporate structural focus, we were doing a really good job. Better than many, not as good as some. I'd like us to continue to do the work we're doing, but do way better reporting, so that every year we're able to see, are we making any progress or not? Does it seem like it's stagnated? Does it seem like other things have jumped it in prioritization? That's where my mind is. So now, everybody else jump in. Danny?
Yeah. I also think, given the fact that we align so well with the GRC's goals, objectives, and strategies, I think we saw that when we went to decide if we were going to join. I think, that's what kind of sealed the deal for me in joining, is that we were already doing this stuff. And with enhanced reporting, I think we can showcase that to the public and to the council, and we can feel good about the things that we are doing and the achievements that we are doing, and that might entice us to start achieving more. So I think the enhanced reporting is where I would want to be as well.
Leslie, please.
Yeah, I guess my question is, how do we know if we're progressing if we don't have a plan and goals? So to me, enhanced reporting kind of doesn't mean anything unless we have some sort of a larger plan that we are trying, or something that we are trying to accomplish, right? And I think we're doing an excellent job of being thoughtful of environmental sustainability in the way that we just do business as our expectation from the village, as you can see from the 94% of goals. Obviously, it is something that is always in our mind. But correct me if I'm wrong, we do not currently have anybody on staff who is an expert in any sort of environmental sustainability policy or anything like that. Correct. So while we may have enhanced reporting, we're not going to have any sort of expertise moving forward on how we can do better. And so I think at minimum we need to do 3A and at least come up with some small metrics that we are going to be moving towards. I would be in between A and B. So I think we should be using boards and commissions. I don't know why we have an Environmental Concerns Commission if we are not going to be using them for things like this. We use our other boards and commissions for these types of purposes. For example, our Human Services Commission was used for the gap analysis report. To me, that's exactly what we should be using our Environmental Concerns Commission for. It would almost be like a gap analysis report. But I don't necessarily think that we need to go, whole hog on the whole GRC metric. So, looking at a couple other municipalities, Naperville has both a short-term work plan and a longer-term work plan. So they have a 5-year sustainability work plan, and then Naperville 2036, where they have some really larger overarching issues. I don't think we're there yet. Wheaton has a sustainability plan, and they actually report on the metrics in real time on their website. They focused on 3 primary goals, which is reducing their carbon footprint, reducing the waste sent to local landfills, and supporting resident participation in things like composting and really using biological materials. Elmhurst also released an action plan back in 2018, and they did this more targeted approach where they kind of had some of those larger GRC goals, and then they focused on maybe just a few objectives and strategies. To me, that makes sense for where we are. I don't think we're at a place where we can go through that whole document, but I do think that we could probably find a few areas where maybe we were lacking. If my mind I remember correctly, I believe that energy and some of the policy and ordinance kind of areas were really some spots where we had a real bare connection. So I wonder if those might be some useful areas to focus on. We could potentially, again, engage the ECC there, do a real small-scale plan, and even potentially look into getting somebody on staff who can help us, one, tell us where we should be heading, and then two, we would have that enhanced reporting to know if that's where we're going. So that's kind of where I think would be the most realistic for where we are at this point in time. So that's where I sit. Thanks.
Let me clarify something, because Leslie, I agree with a lot of what you said. My version of enhanced reporting may not match your version of enhanced reporting. That an annual, essentially, effort like we went through last time is what's in my mind for enhanced reporting. And what that really is a complete look at the GRC, entire GRC plan. So it's not a matter of us picking a few things to look at. We would see from year 1 to year 2 if there were any actual enhancements, improvements, progress made in light of the whole thing. That was my version of enhanced reporting.
That's what we need is.
Yeah, and that's what I view it as too. I guess what I'm saying is much like we have a comprehensive plan where we say kind of this is the vision of what we want to be moving towards when we make those day-to-day decisions, we don't really have a vision for what we want our built-out community to look like. We don't have, thoughts about should we be incentivizing renewables? Should we be doing, we don't have any sort of kind of like a long-term vision for those areas in which we think we could make the biggest impact and get the biggest bang for our buck. And to me, that's where the small-scale sustainability plan comes into focus, is it would kind of give us, that vision so that whatever it is that we're doing as we make these decisions, we kind of always keep those few maybe goals and objectives in mind, because that's maybe where we're lacking the most. And then it could almost be like those, every 5 years, maybe, or 3 years, we reevaluate and say, okay, we're doing a little bit better here, maybe we need to look at this area now. That's kind of where my brain was going with it.
Others? Greg?
Thank you, Bob. I think Leslie tapped my phone, because I had at least some of the outlines of that conversation with Bob earlier today. I think engaging the ECC is the right way to go. I'm much more on the 3A side than the 3B side. I'd like to see a smaller plan, but I'd like to see us use the expertise on the Environmental Concerns Commission to help us determine, what piece of the GRC goals and objectives do we look at first? How do we prioritize them, and where do we get that bang for our buck? Where do we get the most impact for our community? So it sounds like, on the continuum, Bob's probably a little bit closer to 3, but he's still, on that side of 2. But I would like to see us use the ECC in ways that we haven't in many, many years. And as a former ECC member, I think there's a lot of value to be had there. So.
As we go down this route, if we hear more and more talk about ECC, one of the things the staff will say is because we don't have an environmental planner or policy scientist person, the engagement with the ECC has been a challenge in our past. I mean, we've had some of the staff members here have been de facto liaisons to the ECC, so if we're going that route, the staff will put up our hand and say, hey, we probably do need a staff member so we can be effective. So.
If I can, I'll just piggyback on that. I think that's my biggest sticking point for 3A. I think we have seen in recent months the impact of I believe it's a traffic streets person that has been looking at our ordinances and evaluating where we can be improving, and we are just seeing improvement after all very much, just coming across our desk, and these are impactful things. To me, it takes somebody with that knowledge, head down kind of work to look at that. I agree. I think 3B is too big a task for us now, but I could easily see with the right staff member, liaison,
bringing the ECC back, although I would propose a different name. Environmental concerns sounds on the negative, maybe we can positive that up. Actually, I think that was the first time you brought something like that up. So sustainability, whatever it is, I feel that's a critical piece too. So I am for sure in 3A, but I would really, really want to see a staff member added that has what we need to be effective in that. I appreciate the need for enhanced reporting. I think we all saw a lot of value in that. I think that just drives what the scope is each time, and it hopefully in 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, we're at a point where we can handle a large scope initiative. I think that's maybe even too long, but trying to, in the spirit of compromise tonight, I am trying to make sure we attack it in a way that's meaningful. So 3A for sure, and I would just want to see that include a committed staff member.
Mike, Martin?
I'm 3B.
Okay.
So we're talking about setting goals, right? So I'm supportive of 3B, knowing that we may not get there, but this is something I think we should be leading on. We shouldn't be afraid of failing on. I think there's a cost of inaction. So we talk about costs all the time, and as Commissioner Gilmartin was just sharing, you look at what happened when we spent that time and the results from that. There are things we're not aware of right now. It could be much better. This could actually result in saving the village a considerable amount of money, both government and our residents. And I think it sends the right message. And I'd like to see Downers Grove leading on something like this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm at.
Very passionate. Thank you.
Succinct.
I was in the audience when the motion was passed to join the GRC, and that was the right thing to do. I'm glad we did. It's very fresh. We don't have experience with any of these levels yet. So where I'm at, well, let me before that, the other thing I was really impressed with, those in the audience when this was passed, was what the stats were that were reported in terms of what the village has already been doing for many, many years, and where it stands versus our peers in DuPage County and beyond, and also even against the Greenest Region Compact itself. And I was just impressed by the fact that the Director of Environmental Initiatives for the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, which is the agency that operates the GRC, was extremely impressed with how the GRC goals and the Village of Downers Grove strategic goals align right now. And it's a wonderful build on the GRC framework. So there is a framework that we can go to. We're not flying blind here. But I was impressed with the fact that clearly Downers Grove is one of our leading communities on the strong side. So I kind of view us as somebody who's been working out in the basement gym and getting really fit and buff. So we've been really working out and doing a good job without having to go to an outside gym or hire a professional trainer. That's kind of the way I look at this. Not that we can't do better, but I'm at 2 for now, because I would like to see the reporting and I would like to learn from that experience and then have a more experiential basis for moving forward. Because I remember back when the ECC, or the commission formerly known as ECC, when it was very vibrant and robust. And it worked like all our other boards and commissions, where either staff or the council would direct it to look at a topic and report back for consideration by staff or the council. And that's the way, I think I mentioned earlier, it's not the way almost all our boards and commissions work, and that's the way they should work. So having the ECC back, or whatever we're going to call it, back and participating again, I'm all for that, regardless of if we were in the GRC or not. Mm-hmm. The ECC should be a contributing board and commission like any of our other boards and commissions. And to me, that's independent of the GRC membership. And then I think it should continue, whether we're in 2 or 3A, it should continue to respect that staff council direction, because that's served us very well for many, many years. So I'm not to 3A yet. I hear all the words, and I love the passion of my colleague here. But I would like to have some experience with two. I would like that reporting, because I remember years ago, people asking me, why don't we do any of these things in Downers Grove? And I would rattle off a list of 20 things that we were doing, and usually I would get this response, oh, I didn't know we had solar. Oh, I didn't know we had biodiesel. Oh, I didn't know we had permeable paper. They just didn't know any of these things. So that's why I'm on two for now.
Can I just ask a quick question? Commissioner Tully, you mentioned that it was vibrant back at a time. Can you speak to, was there any staff expertise at that time that you recall?
Good question.
Dave?
You asked me to remember the
Dave?
staff members.
Yeah.
Oh, I can answer this by
Yeah.
asking Mike and Enza.
No.
Don't worry, it'll eventually come around this way.
Don't think
Nobody.
so.
Nobody.
No.
Yeah, an important
So
thing
is there any-
to mention here is that ECC's lack of activity or lack of vibrance,
Mhm.
which has been bantered around various places, from the dais to this room to the general public, is a function of councils for the last 2 or 3. The ECC functioned in the past just like most of our other recommending bodies, in which they received work from the council. We made choices when we did our garbage contract. We made choices when we reviewed design work and concept designs for our new building to not include them. So they're just, was it more vibrant in the past? Yeah, because councils maybe sent more stuff. We could choose to start doing that again, but it wasn't because there was a environmental scientist on the staff that served on that board and got them moving.
Got it.
But sometimes we did have citizen volunteers that have background
Sure.
in space. I wouldn't call
Yeah.
them professional experts, but like we do with most of our boards and commissions, there will be people who have backgrounds that, we love free expertise, and who have background that they can bring to boards and commissions.
Yeah.
So there were things, now that you're reminding me, there were things like our recycling contract, or water, rain barrel sales, or there were just things that staff would sometimes say, hey, this is something we'd like to get some community input on, get some discussion and recommendations on. Sometimes you might even have somebody who's in the refuse industry, for example, who could speak to recycling practices. And then that would all be brought back either to staff or directly to the council, or sometimes, as the mayor said, the council would have a conversation and say, well, what do you think about this? Well, I don't know. What do you think about this? Well, I don't know. Well, we have an environmental concerns commission. Let's ask them. They would send it down to them, and they would then have very specific, here's what we'd like your input on, and they would send back a report, and then the council would go, oh, thank you very much for that input.
Yeah.
And it would also then serve as another way for the broader community to input and dialogue on the topic, because
Sure.
there would be additional meetings.
Mike?
I have a question. Enhanced report. So, am I hearing that we essentially did that here this last year in order to figure out where we're at?
Correct.
So, wouldn't it be fair to say that there actually is no option one? What we're talking about is, do you want to continue doing option 2 that you just did and you're doing? Or are you looking to move beyond that? I think that's really, to me, that option 1 doesn't really even exist.
Well,
Option 2 is kind of like
and
where we are.
And nobody's sitting here suggesting they like it either.
Correct.
So the reason we asked is such a significant undertaking that we want to ask, but we still got to do that.
Got it. What I'm saying is that we've had some reporting, we've had some experience with that, and it makes sense to set a little bit loftier goal than doing what we just did last year. Although I hear adding, definitely re-energizing the ECC.
I want to go back to something Chris said. I think one of the challenges that we have with any policy question, doesn't matter if it's outdoor dining or CNG snowplows, right, is the weaving of that into all of our policy decisions, weaving that into our budgeting process, weaving that into all of these things. This job isn't hard, it's complicated, because it's all woven together, right? And so one of the things that I think would really be helpful to us and that I would support is the idea that we looked for specific staff expertise in this. I'm going to say this on camera, and the world is going to flame me in social media tomorrow, but to me, actually measuring ourselves against the GRC on an annual basis to the way we did last time, and having a person on staff that's engaged day in and day out with all of the rest of staff as we implement those things that the 7 of us crazies say, is far more likely to take us farther down this road than anything else we would do, including an ECC that we would randomly assign stuff to. Because that person would be part of those conversations that happen at the staff level day in and day out on a host of subjects.
So you like 3A now?
Nope, that's not what I said. I want to hire somebody that's a professional in this, and I want to see what happens year after year. But it's important enough that there's a person who's involved in the day-to-day discussion. To me, ECC is only going to meet monthly if we assign it. And there are hundreds of meetings that happen with a couple of staff to dozens of staff every day. Okay, before we go any further, I'm going to ask for some input, unless you've got something you want to.
So I just want to frame, so this may be confusing to some folks, but as what do we do with this as a staff, and where are you going to see this, and how is this going to be reflected? So it's a little bit messy. It doesn't always fit into option 1, option 2, option 3. But from the staff perspective, this is exactly what the staff was looking for, this kind of give and take and open dialogue. What we will do is we will take what we heard from each council member individually, and then what we can glean from it as a group, and we will prepare that information in an updated draft of the long-range plan. And we will see that it's still clear with the plan. Look at that.
If that was different from before, I was going to, bravo. That would have been awesome.
A lot of confidence that
Wow.
neither Doug or I moved this thing when we got there last time. We're going to talk about priority actions in July and August, early August. And then at the end, August 15th, and maybe even into September, the council will be asked to review and accept the LRP. What we're going to do is, when we give you the complete draft of this LRP, you'll see staff's interpretation of what we heard here tonight, and then we'll put it back in your hands to fine tune, okay? So it may not look exactly like option 2A or 3A or whatever. We're going to try to capture what we heard, write it up. I have a feeling you're going to talk about it again on the 18th and the 1st as a type of potential priority action item, right? Mm-hmm. Remember that when we get to the final draft of the LRP, we still have a little bit of work to do on the goals. Commissioner Tully has some thoughts. We're going to circulate those thoughts. We have some updates on those goals. So it will all come back together. Hopefully the council will see what you told us here tonight reflected, but ultimately it comes back to you. And tonight, from our perspective, has been incredibly helpful on that topic.
So I want to get input from everybody else on this subject, but I want to add a little bit to what Dave just said about process, just so everybody understands the process. If you're just joining us tonight, this key trends and issues thing, as I mentioned earlier, is sort of some of the stuff that's either been already milling around or has been brought to us from somewhere else, or is stuff that we didn't complete, or maybe sometimes put on us. There are things that sometimes just come to us from other entities like state and federal government. These 2 items, priority action items, where the 7 of us sit around the table and say, man, I wish, right? And you can end up with 7 items. That isn't going to happen because there's still a limited number of hours in the day. So what happens is in these 2 meetings, we talk about and try and sort of majority head nod, what do we think we can agree with each other on? Somebody's going to come up with something that nobody else agrees with, and that's just not going to make the list. As Dave said, this becomes a draft. The reason this is August 15th, and there's gaps in some of this, and we might find that our discussions cause us to have bad ones. You're kind of seeing this house today. It's kind of fun. Usually it's right. So, just so everybody understands what the process is going forward. So with that, anybody that wants to add some comments for us to think of on this last item, please raise your hands and I'll jump out at the same time.
I'll start these off. I think there'll be some others. Steve Ruffalo, I'm a longtime resident of Downers Grove, 30 plus years. I love the discussion. This is a fantastic discussion. I'm very supportive of the 3B, and I'll get to that in a moment. I do want to say a couple of things first, though, about your reporting of the 94%. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, that was over several years, right?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you talk about annual work, you're not meeting 94% every year. You know, and whether it just is a great framework, though. That I mean, the opportunity we have right now to to move forward. Yes, you've been following the GRC framework, but rudderless. You know, you don't have a solid sustainability plan. And we in Greener Grove, I think you may have some other representatives of, really would like to see that come together in a structure. And as Commissioner Davenport, I think, pointed out, there are some very fine examples out there of how this could save you a bunch of money. Financially, this could easily step forward and be a very positive thing long term. I love the analogy to the traffic awareness too. So that being said, I want to commend you for getting to this point, but I also want to strongly encourage you to go to step 3B so you know, how do you manage what you don't know? And when I look at everything you have posted back years, okay, we did the barrels here, we did the native plant sale here, and several of the things on that list I've been personally involved in. Pumpkin Smash was one of mine. So I just, the community is here and in support of moving forward more as be that leader that was mentioned. Solar panels on the new facilities, great. We should have them on every building in town. So let's get that moving in that direction. So, and to really make that step of a solid sustainability plan is going to require some expertise. And I have a little bit, but I'm not that person. You need to hire a person who is, I'm not saying I want the job, but you need to hire someone who's trained and knowledgeable and can bring that forward long term. And that's what I'd like to see. And this sustainability plan is not a 5-year plan. It's where the Village of Downers Grove should be, in 2040, 2060, and that. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Please, jump up.
Hi, I'm Becca Snoffer. I'm a rising junior at Downers South, and I'm interning with Greener Grove. So, tidbit story. When I was 10 years old, I emailed Mr. Foley here, and I strongly recommended we should make all the businesses in town stop selling or giving out plastic straws. And this was very strong-headed about this.
I remember that email.
Did you? Oh, goodness. So I think that was this is the biggest environmental problem we have. But obviously it's not. It kind of got this ball rolling in me. I'm now very passionate about environmental science, and I'm going to study it in college and whatnot. So let's see. I did get a response from Mr. Hoey, and he kind of said, it's not on the to-do list this year, and he gave me some resources to reach out to kind of get this idea going more. Very much appreciated. So I wanted to use my voice and use this time to encourage you to put it on the to-do list, to make a to-do list, to get stuff done. The first thing I did when I was an intern, I looked at the Greenest Region Compact, and I read through every single goal, and I thought it was so interesting, and it's like this amazing resource. It's this blueprint, and it spells out like what you can do. Not in the best detail, which is exactly why we should have a staff member who knows what they're doing. And there's so many things that a village has to do. It's not fair to ask all of you to suddenly become environmental experts. So that's why it's so important. I think we should try to get that expertise on the board and get us talking about these goals. And obviously 3B, that's like where it's at. We need the small scope for this 2-year planning, but we need the large scope to have a place to really go so that in 50 years, the council will be sitting here and will say, thanks to the council 50 years ago who kind of got this rolling, because this is what we need now. It's not going to go away. It's a problem that's going to be here in the future generations. Thank you all for starting this correctly. I'm not pushing it off. This past decade, I've been socially aware. I've seen a lot of pushing aside of things that we need to get done. So I can appreciate it. We could not push aside and say, this is what we need to get done, and this is the council that can do it.
Good interns, you may have made me change my mind.
Hi, Ken Moyer, Downers Grove resident since 1995, and you've been hearing from me periodically for most of that time. I wanted to talk about having a sustainability plan and how to go about getting one. The report from back in March gave a very thorough accounting of how we compare to the GRC goals and objectives, and it pointed out that, in fact, for many years, we've been doing a lot of things on their agenda, and we've, as part of Pierce Downers Heritage Alliance, we've been there to celebrate many of those things along the way, having a green fleet, having recycling events, I think the rain barrels were mentioned, and there have been a lot of different things, and of course the many components that went into the civic center planning. A lot of those things have been incorporated over the years, and we have often found that, in fact, we do well by doing good. Right? That those things, in the long run, save us money as well. And all of that has been great, but it's been, I don't want to say haphazard, but it hasn't been according to a plan. Staff have come up with great ideas. We've been able to implement a lot of them, but that's not the same as having things being done in a systematic way. Sustainability plan would let you, determine a vision for where we want to be some years from now. It lets you set, goals that are specific to Downers Grove, not just the list that GRC provides, and to identify priorities for, which things we think are most important to do. It lets you, come up with metrics, ways to measure our performance. How are we progressing against this plan and the goals that we set for ourselves? And last but not least, it shows that the town has a commitment, that the town values environmental sustainability in a very public way. And that's something that I think the community would widely support, and also is something that we can market to people who are looking for, to choose a community in Chicago zone. This is a green place. How to go about getting a sustainability plan and implementing it is, first of all, we don't have to start from scratch. We have the framework that the GRC provides. We have the report that sets a lot of the background for it already. We have examples, as Commissioner Sadowski, you would mention, from other nearby towns that have gone down this road already. So there are many sort of models to choose from. But we want something that's specific for Downers Grove. And to do that, do we need a sustainability czar? I certainly would never oppose that. Do we need a staff person with some expertise in that area? That certainly would be an advantage. Does it have to be a position devoted only to that? I don't know. Maybe it could be part of someone's portfolio among other duties. But we shouldn't let the lack of investment in staff time take away the free labor, the freely given labor and expert labor that we get from an environmental commission. And I remember the environmental commission before it was shut down as including people from the US EPA, environmental engineers, a lot of people with deep expertise, the very sort that we could use. And I'm sure there are many people in the community now who are just sort of champing at the bit to get back into that and serve in an advisory capacity. Let them do a lot of the work. I think it could be done that way, and it could be very well done that way. So, thank you.
Others? Please.
So go. My name is Lisa. I'm a Downers Grove resident for about 10 years. I'm a physician. I'm the chief medical officer at Argonne National Laboratory. And that is part of what has sparked my interest in all of this. As the mayor has said, you know, if something is important, we take it on. And every day I work with some of the most brilliant minds in the world who are at Argonne, and they are working on the biggest problems the world faces, which right now, the money and the time is going towards things like battery storage. How do we have an environmentally friendly battery that can store 10 times the power in 10 times less, size and capacity? We're using our supercomputers to use artificial intelligence to look at ways we can combat climate change. We're doing all kinds of where I'm helping these scientists by keeping them healthy and safe, but they work with all the dangerous things there. So, yeah. But anyway, I wanted to bring that up because it is a big disconnect for me. Sometimes when I think about these issues and I'm sitting and listening to the discussions or the meetings, it's really frustrating because I know that a few miles from here, there are amazing, brilliant, prize-winning minds who are working on huge, huge problems. And there's a lot of solutions already, and there are a lot of solutions that would probably fit our town, and yet there's such a disconnect because we're here in this little room. And although to the community sometimes it might feel to some of us like, wow, you guys just aren't paying attention, we realize coming to these meetings that you've got a lot to do, right? So you need an expert in the mix, whether that's someone that you hire, whether that's a commission that does that. I'm willing to reach out to contacts that I have, and if you ever want, someone to come and speak to you about, what are some of the highest priority things that we could do as a town, or what are some of the cheap, not expensive things that you can do, because you hold a lot of power. You really do. Every decision that you make that you might think is so small as far as a sidewalk grate or something, and I'm sure it just gets very tedious and boring. But what you decide has a huge impact. It has a huge impact on how much carbon dioxide we're putting in the air, on whether we have some of the wildlife that we have here, live or not, on how much clean air we have to breathe and what the water's like downstream. So that's a lot of responsibility that you have. And so when you see all these people here, no one's after you. We just really want you to consider those things with every single decision that you make, and we appreciate you all so much.
Thank you. What else? Please.
Kevin Leslie, community member. I just want to say that I think that it is really important to hire somebody to be in charge of that. We have a lot of great community members. We have a lot of great people, great minds out there that will help with the ECC. But I think if you don't have somebody at the helm managing all that, getting that information, getting back to the council members, that it's going to get lost. And who's going to go search for it, right? Is the staff going to be available to go search for that stuff? So I just want to say that.
Please.
Julie Ruffalo. Do I have to stand up? Because I'm sitting. I'll just add one more thing that Kevin said. My name is Julie Ruffalo. Been in the village for about 35 years. I think part of the reason that staff expertise will help you is it does permeate so many different things that the village is involved in. So Carol mentioned something about the design of the street light. I mean, just to have this sort of street light rather than this sort of street light makes a difference to the environment. No one is going to pick those things up unless they're embedded in the village. You already have rules about commercial parking spaces, right, for every development that's in.
but let's just tweak that a little bit. Make some rules about having charging stations as part of that development based on the occupancy and the square footage and things. You already have a lot of things in place, but there could just be small changes. The Environmental Commission may pick that up, but maybe their fingers aren't in all those small decisions that the village is involved in. And many of these changes are quite small. We really appreciate the solar and some of the design on the new buildings, and that's great that we're picking those up. But there's also a lot of really small things that could be done that in a whole, right, village-wide, will make some differences over time. So, you know, from my standpoint, I just want to make sure we're picking up those small changes before we make these investments that aren't going to be redesigned for 20 or 30 years. So, but appreciate all this discussion, and, you know, the village has come a long way. There's just a lot of things we can do that would take us that much further. So, thank you.
Anyone else?
I guess, Bob Johnson. I guess I look at what you've done stormwater-wise. I've been a long-time resident, 31 plus years, and there was flooding all over. But you had a plan. You had a 15-year plan that went in place. And look at the difference of our town now versus where we were many years ago. But the plan that you talked about, the rudder, if you don't have a rudder, you're not getting from Chicago, Illinois, somewhere in Michigan by boat. And I think that's my concern with our plan as a community is we need somebody to guide us to make good decisions, and make good decisions not only financially but environmentally for
our future. Sorry, I'm Bob also. And that's what I'm saying for our future generation. Most of you probably have kids. What will they grow up with? Bunch of rocks and dust? No, they want to have what we have. And if you ruin it for them and designing things that emit carbon, emit methane, gases, then the air polluted, and it's no fun. So I'm asking, please make the sustainability plan in the beginning, like you did for our new town hall. I went to college for this and graduated with a sustainability plan. And through the education that I got, they said, what the planning beginning, or the planning as a base to start off with your sustainability initiative is a lot easier than as it and as we go. So start off with a firm base and build from there. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay, I guess I'll.
Go ahead.
I'm Ben Ruffalo. I would piggyback on what Bob was saying. I'm a teacher, and it sort of feels as you were going over these plans. Option 3 sounded like you were building a curriculum, so I could come in every day and teach science, and a kid would learn some sort of science, and I would hit some standard. But that doesn't mean next year they would learn the science they need to learn as a junior, that they would need to learn by a senior, that they would graduate with, right? So I really think if you're starting, you need to build that curriculum plan. You need to make the idea of where are we going to get so that I can, start on that now. Like, you're not going to be a what are you, a commissioner? You're not going to be a commissioner forever, right? So, sorry, I know. But like the next commissioners need to know where we're going, so we don't just think you were twiddling your thumbs, like this is what you were doing. So I think, if you're creating a curriculum, it's easy to just teach random science, but it's hard to build a kid to graduate, right? And that's kind of what you're doing for the town.
Backwards design.
Oh, you're a teacher.
I'm not a teacher, but I'm married to one. Yeah, I got it. I got you. Mhm.
Anyone else? Okay, all right. You got good information?
Fantastic direction, thank you.
Okay. All right. Chris?
Okay, I'd just like to say thanks for all who showed up tonight. This is a really, really important subjects we're talking about, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah,
That's,
is there any structure for those later meetings yet? What items will be on the 18th, what items will be on 1st? in August?
There's not an agenda per se, but it's going to look and feel a lot like this. So watch, we'll get these kinds of things out. Those next two meetings in particular are even more open-ended, I guess, because they're those opportunities for the council to say, I wish we had fill in the blank, whatever.
So you can't say what's
whatever one of us might have, right?
Yeah.
But to Chris's point, and I was kind of alluding to it earlier, at least trying to. We never have this. At least we haven't recently. Martin certainly has had some in the past, maybe. But you saw tonight. Most of you were over there, came over here, which is great, and you saw a variety of opinions on a variety of subjects, and you saw the 7 people who are your friends and neighbors trying to sort it out. And we appreciate the input. I don't know where any of this will land, but you should do exactly what you're doing right now. Stay in and be part of the process. No, it may not go exactly your way or my way or whomever else is sitting up here, but participate. This is way better and way more fun than we've had in quite a while.
We appreciate you listening to us.
Contrary to popular belief, not everybody is going to jail for politics. Some of them are just your friends and neighbors.
I think you also see that you probably have some good base for that redesigned environmental, whatever we're calling it, council.
Yeah. And there's, as you saw, there's, I don't know how many people, 25 people or so here, there's 7 people around here that weren't exactly aligned, but we're going to come up with something that's an improvement for the village and better direction, guaranteed. So, with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. You really had to sneak that in there, didn't you, Chris?
We are adjourned. Thank you again.
Steal my thunder.